welcome back to Realness with 3 S's. We are covering Big Brother Cheesecake 4, and I have, obviously, Jonathan here with us today. Say hi, Jonathan.
Hi, and Ryland. Hi.
And Rylan. And we have an absent JoJo today, but he might be able to sneak in on location. So I'll say hi from JoJo. Hi, hi from JoJo. And we have today's guest. We have Ryan Ballantine. He is our first juror, our latest evictee. Say hello.
Hey everybody, I've been looking forward to this since I found out that the vote was turning against me. I've been eagerly anticipating getting on and talking to you guys about the game. I've watched every episode so far, and I'm kind of excited to break it down.
Well, let's just start it then. When you found out that the vote had changed, how come you couldn't get yourself to stay? What happened there?
Well, first off, the vote changed before I even knew it was happening. When I got the first inclination that it was happening, the votes had already gone in. So the deadline for the votes was 9 o'clock Eastern. And the first time anybody admitted to me that they voted me out was at 11:30 Eastern. So there was no time to switch it around. And I give credit to the guys that switched it, between Nick and Curtis. Curtis really rallied. And I just, I asked everybody at the beginning of the week, hey, we're good. And everybody said they are. And I'm a guy I've worked in service my whole life. So when you say to somebody, yes, I'm going to do something, that's expected that if there's ever going to be a change in plans, that you would, I call my customer and say, hey, I know I said it would be there by Thursday, but it's not going to be there till Friday. Let's see if there's something else we can do. And I know the game, and I know the game changes. But the people that I thought had my back, I'd been working with since day one. So for them to flip so suddenly was a surprise to me.
Okay, hold on. So if you remember, if you watched every episode, you would know that JoJo screwed me over, and
yes.
me and him were number ones from day one.
Right.
So don't trust anybody.
No, true. And I think what it came down to was at the end of the day, I think a lot of people felt like I was more of a threat than Curtis. And maybe that's because I engineered throwing 2 HOHs to Curtis so that he would have them and be able to do the dirty work for me. And I think that people saw that we had engineered Curtis to be HOH, and I think they felt that I was responsible for that. And when someone's responsible for engineering the game in that degree, then Curtis isn't necessarily the threat having won all the competitions. I'm the threat because I made that happen. And so I think that there was a lot of, I think that was an easy way for Curtis to turn people against me.
So who is the we? You mentioned one we there. You were like, we.
Well, so the endurance competition, as soon as Megan and Brandon were out, we had an agreed order on who was going to lose, when they were going to lose, and who was going to win. And we even talked about the excuses that we would use for losing, so that way it wouldn't seem suspicious. We all talked within the group when Andrew accused us all of throwing it the next day, about how to manage Andrew and how to talk to him about what we were doing and how it was totally legit and above board. So, I mean, I had a Final 5 alliance on day, I had a pregame 4 alliance and a Final 5 alliance on day 1. The pregame 4 was Curtis, Brazil, Kat, and myself. And then on day 1, we added Brenda into that mix. We decided between ourselves who we would target to reach out to talk to outside of that 5 and start setting up side alliances. And what I really regret is that Nick and Marcin and Curtis and Brenda all kind of ended up in their 4, which, I mean, they missed a mark calling it NMBC. Because I mean, there's actual news stations that you could have stolen their initials from and then bin the news. I just feel like they missed the mark there. But that side alliance, what I didn't do was, in all my chatter with Nick, was in this week, I didn't let him know that I had known everything that was going on in that alliance the whole season because Curtis was telling me. I don't know that Nick knew that we were together until it was too late, and that I don't know he would have felt as kind of put off by me telling him that Curtis was ratting him out effectively the whole season. I think that might have been able to sway Nick to keep me instead of Curtis, but who knows?
You seem to have put like a lot of effort and energy into throwing these competitions and
Yes.
managing Andrew and all this. Why didn't you put the same amount of effort in guaranteeing that you are going to be staying this past week?
Because I thought I had. So I think when the nominations came out, I discussed it with everybody. I said, look, if if it is Curtis and I, if the veto doesn't change anything, will you keep me over Curtis? And everyone said it's a really tough decision. I talked back and forth with a bunch of them, and they all said, yeah, you know what, you're right. It does make sense to keep you over Curtis, and I've got a good working relationship with you, and I can see us moving forward. And everybody that voted me out, with the exception of CJ, told me that they were keeping me, and then they flipped. So,
who were your votes?
Well, see, I don't even know what the final vote count was, but I assume I left 4-2. Because I haven't watched the eviction episode. I assume I left 4-2, which means that Kat and Brenda stayed loyal to me and kept me. And then Marcin told me he was voting me to keep me and changed his mind. Nick said absolutely 100%, I got you, you're not going anywhere. And he voted me out. And Brazil changed her mind. And I think the one that one really reminded me that you can't take anything for granted, because what Brazil said to me was, yeah, I told you I was keeping you, but then Curtis campaigned for an entire day about why he should stay and why you should go, and you didn't come back to me. And I said, well, if you come back to me in this game, and when I played it in the house and every kind of social interaction I've come to after the fact, if you constantly come back to me and check me for loyalty, then to me that means that you don't trust me, and so then I need to get rid of you. So if you're constantly,
I think it's understandable when people are on the block to be like, hey, I want to.
But I had done all that. I did all that work before the veto.
But if
I had felt like that was all locked in before the veto, and I had seen how other people constantly asking questions had rankled some of the people that I thought of as my voters. Nick and I had specifically talked about, hey, I'm glad you don't waste my time with a bunch of bullshit. We just get right to it. We make our decisions, and we don't move on from there.
I think that the House guests used that against you for the fact that
for sure.
That you weren't going to come back to them, so they could switch the vote, just avoid having that conversation with you, and then give it up to you when it's too late.
Oh, it was incredibly well done. I don't hold any, like, I understand I took my eye off the ball, and I know why I did it, and it has nothing, it's not game related at all. I focused my social time on other issues, as Jonathan has the background there. I've been very involved in deep diving my Twitter feed, just watching that all day. And so I did take my mind off the Cheesecake game entirely, because I didn't feel like I needed to watch it, because I felt, okay, well, I've got my safety. It's fine. I'm fine. And I really should have known better, given that my Big Brother experience ended in exactly the same way, where everyone said I was fine, and then Johnny flipped the vote in the last 24 hours and got me out.
So can you say that this is a flaw in your game?
Maybe. Look, I'm playing for $400 worth of dessert here. It's not like I appreciate and dedicated my time to the game. But I also, I got involved in other stuff for 48 hours, and it was the wrong 48 hours to stop paying attention. And I did think I was in a lot more control of the game than I turned out to be. And Curtis did a great job of flipping it. I had thought, as up to Marcin's message at 11:30 on Wednesday night, I figured I was going to be able to roll through to the finale because I had everybody in my pocket.
Right, because you talk about having, kind of other focuses in the last few days or whatnot, but perception is everything. And I know as a viewer, if I look back several weeks even, you are labeled along with Kat as king and queen. And, the perception is there that you're running the house. That's a really dangerous perception to have.
It's interesting because most of the people within the house wouldn't have said that. The people who got evicted often blamed me for their eviction, and rightfully so. I mean, let's not pretend like I wasn't the first person to throw Megan's name out there, because I was. I wanted Megan gone because I will never be convinced that you can capitalize 2 letters in the middle of a word by mistake. It doesn't happen. Your fingers don't work that way from a typing perspective. So I figured she threw the competition. I had seen her throwing competitions in the past, and I realized that she was incredibly dangerous. She wasn't talking much in the main chat, so I needed her to go, because those are the people that can emerge late in the game and go forward. And Brazil's trying the same strategy, and obviously it's working, because Chantel, you couldn't even remember she was in the game last week. So, now apparently she's HOH. So
Megan said she threw only one, the virus one, but you're saying she threw a bunch.
She says that, but I don't see that way. Because she would joke about being in the background. She would joke about not being in the forefront of things. And it became a running gag throughout the season that, oh, look, it's Megan trying to hide from the spotlight. So I give her a lot more credit than she gives herself, I guess, if that's the case. And she didn't throw everything. I gave her the credit of assuming she was throwing it.
So what was your strategy coming into the house, and did you learn anything from your Big Brother Canada experience? And
I expected to be the first person gone, honestly. I expected, I figured coming in with having played the game before on a public level and having the super fans that existed within the game be there. CJ said it to me early. She said, well, it'll be a big feather in the cap of whoever gets you out because you played the real game. So I knew my expectation and my strategy coming in was to build alliances as much as I could as early as possible, and then try and downplay everything I was doing and every suggestion I made that we ended up enacting into being a group decision, into being something that everybody was a part of and not something that I had engineered. Because I realized that as soon as enough people believed it. And I mean, this show didn't help me at all. And Andrew's videos didn't help me at all, because Andrew consistently referred to me as a dominant player in his videos, which reinforces any suspicions anybody has. Every single house guest that came on here said, oh, well, it was totally Ryan. It was totally Ryan. And then I would have to spend like the next hour in the group chat denying responsibility for what I just done.
You were so trusting in the last few days when you're saying that we've targeted. But I want to bring one thing up real quick too. The saying that we didn't help you. I was really trying to hint, wink, wink, because you're on my team. Back when the mole was going on, and we kind of discussed not weaponizing her, and I said on here that I guess Ryan's game is going really well for him, and he doesn't need to.
No, I know. I caught it.
It's kind of like,
I couldn't weaponize the mole at that point because I had my solid 5 and I had 2 or 3 people outside that 5 that I had good trust with. At that point, I felt really good with about 8 people. And so to weaponize the mole, and I know I'm gone now, but weaponizing the mole at that moment would have completely screwed me. Hey, it's JoJo. I was just talking about how much I hated you for dissing me and not showing up. I spent the first 20 minutes talking about
JoJo's back on his cell.
Shit about me, fine with it. I got a couple of minutes before this goddamn hike.
Okay, well, we kind of intercepted a question, but JoJo, you have the floor for your 2 minutes. So what would you like?
Thank you. Ryan, I think you played a great game. Would have loved to see you go farther, actually.
I appreciate it.
My first question is, which player do you think you underestimated the most?
I think now that's a, I think the player that is being underestimated the most right now is probably Brazil. I think a lot of people don't see her as playing the high-level game that she's been playing. She was an integral part of that first Final 5 that I was in. She was in on all the decisions. She was a person that was not seen to be connected, and so she was brought into a lot of side alliances that then she fed back into the main alliance. And as a result, all of those people are gone. So I think Brazil's game is probably being underestimated.
Okay, good answer. Would you have stuck with the girls moving forward, do you think?
Oh yeah, if I were still in the house this week, Brazil, Kat, and Brenda still would have been my final four. I think at this point, Brenda. I mean, she voted for me to stay, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm the only person she told she was voting for that she actually voted for. So if that says anything about where Brenda's game has been thus far, Brenda had been in that Final Five alliance with us from day one, and we consistently had Brenda tell people that she was not with us and consistently act like she was not with us so that we could get information from other people. So I think Brenda did incredibly well. But yeah, I absolutely would have stuck with the girls 100%. I think Nick, Marcin, and Curtis have a final three. And the idea that Brenda's somehow on the block this week, I know that's spoilers going ahead, but the idea that Brenda's somehow on the block this week, and I don't know who's nominated next to her, but Brenda's going up. Give your head a shake. Those three guys have won almost every competition this season, and if you start to allow them limited time where they can protect each other, they're going to roll to the end. So I think the girls would be wise to band together and target the rest of the guys in the house.
I hate gender divisions, but in this case, it just makes sense because
they had a
10-6
lead to start. It was a 10-6 lead to start, and somehow we got it down to, I think at one point it was 6-5 or something, and now it's 5-3. Like, you need to, like, I don't understand why they didn't girl power up a long time ago.
As the first member of the jury, are you going to be a sway jury person? Are you going to really push for your agenda?
Well, I told a couple people this the other day. Anybody who watched me on Big Brother season 6, when I left the house, I was pretty clear about if Kayla got to the final, I would do whatever I could to make sure she didn't win. And I did that. And I was successful in that. Because when people came to the jury house, a lot of them were really pissed at Paris. Really pissed at Paris. And so I spent a good amount of my time in the jury house just kind of defending Paris's game and also tearing down Kayla's game in as subtle a way as I could. And Paris won with a 6-1 vote. So I said the reason I wanted Kayla to lose was because she lied to me, she lied about me, and that was something that I wasn't going to accept. And so I said to everybody that voted me out and changed their minds on me, if you think that I'm going to campaign for you or be okay with voting for you or thinking of swaying the jury in your favor when you lied to me, that's not what I'm about. I played that, like, and I know Big Brother is a game that includes deception, but I was front about everything I was doing. I always told people exactly what I was going to do. I lived up to that. I held to that. I was the guy that was sharing screenshots of everything all over the place because I wanted that Front Street game to be something that people could rely on from me, that when Ryan gives you his word, it means something. So if they had come to me even before the vote, if they had just said, if Lindsay had said from go, hey, you're the target, you're going home, you're a big target, and everyone had come to me and said, yeah, you're kind of getting Brandon this week. We all know you're going, and it's a shame, but we're keeping Curtis over you. I would have had a lot more respect for it than the way they did it. And the people involved, when they're looking at me from a jury management standpoint, they knew how I played the game and how I saw things. To come back and take that away and kind of do it in the way they did it means that I lose a little respect for the move.
Two things really fast. You're
Sure.
saying you haven't lied at all this game?
I'm
Just yes or
pretty
no, it's
confident.
okay.
I'm pretty confident that there might have been some semantic discussions where people could have taken impressions that
Sure.
they might consider a lie, but there's nothing where I said A and I meant B. There's nothing where I said A and I did B. if I said something, I did it. And I mean, there are people who are going to say that it's not like Nick's telling people that I had a final three with him. At no point did he and I say absolutely final three. He said, I'd like to sit at finale with you. And I said, yeah, that would be great, because then I'm at finale. That doesn't mean that he and I had a final two deal at all. That just means that, yeah, sure, if you want to sit at finale with me, that's great. That you know, just because I'm agreeing with you, semantics don't mean lies. And I think there is a difference, and it's a subtlety difference that you can play within the game.
And I think they probably didn't tell you because you would have fought even harder to save yourself.
Oh, right? I mean, that's what they said. They said we needed you to go as quietly as possible because we felt like you could flip the vote. And I said, well, but at the end of the day, if you've got your solid four and you know that you've got 4 votes to kick me out, then what are you worried about? You can be honest about it, like I had been all along. Every single person that left, I told them they were leaving and why I was sending them home.
Say that again?
That was a bus.
How solid is anybody? We don't know.
Well, even in our game, JoJo would ask me many times if like I was going to be turning my back on him. So
yeah,
it's a game where
loyal, but still.
No, I get that. I get that. I think for me as who I am in my day-to-day, integrity means a lot, and being able to say and knowing that the game is the game, but to me it's your word is still your word. And so if you told me on Tuesday that you were keeping me, I shouldn't have to ask you again on Wednesday. And if I tell you on Tuesday that you're staying and you ask me on Wednesday, it's because I think that you don't trust me anymore. So that trust, the way that trust is built, and that's within myself, and I can see, Chantel, you're dying to argue with me, and I'm fine with that. 100%. I get it. Yeah. Like, it's just, well, no, I know. It's, I mean, it's, I feel like
that in general
you see it differently.
The flaw in your game tends to be in your social interactions and being able to read the room and being able to see how you come across to other people. Now, it's not like it's just you push your own agenda before listening to everybody else's. So people might be like, yeah, we're keeping you, because you don't necessarily, in my opinion, listen to where they're coming from and allow them to kind of have their own vision on how they want the week to go. It's kind of like, okay, I said it, it's stamped and firm.
Oh, no, I did that much differently this week. Or this season. On this show, I did it much differently. I would always wait for everybody else to pitch
I feel
their
like
agenda.
My interactions with you, and I can imagine that with anybody playing any games like with you, that you know, you have your presence, you have how you want and you feel things should go, you have how you feel maybe people should be playing the game, and your way is the right way, and that's how people should be playing along.
I mean, obviously not. I finished 9th twice.
No, exactly. You haven't learned that it's a flaw.
No, I don't. I mean,
I don't think you see what everyone else is seeing. Hi, JoJo. But you know, to be fair, I did hear that, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I did hear that it was up in the air with your vote, and this was really drawing a line in the sand. So someone made a decision, and JoJo's agreeing. And you know, so it wasn't like a for sure thing. But I think you talk a lot about having like what your moves were and your place was in the house. But like going back to what I was saying earlier about perception, it's a lot of how you were perceived that I think got you where you, this early removal from the game.
Oh, for sure. I got cocky. I don't deny I got cocky.
Yeah,
I think it's what happens when seven straight evictions go exactly how you tell the people that they're going to go, and you arrange for multiple people to throw multiple competitions.
But we're also talking about,
you get cocky about it.
We're also going back to like the place that you had, like what you've done and the moves that you made.
Yeah.
But I think what we've heard of a lot of is just more of how you were perceived, your like just energy and just kind of like Chantal was saying, like the forcefulness or.
Well, as soon as the word dictatorship comes up, that's when that goes, oh, God, do I pivot from that? I think that was the key thing.
And I don't know if you were ever... So my question to you would be if you were ever aware fully how aggressively your interactions with people would come across, because that's kind of what's been reported back to us.
It's interesting. It's interesting that's perception. That's perception.
But
Because
when it's everyone's
if you read,
perception.
well, sure, but if you're reading text and you feel like it's aggressive towards you, I think, like I said, the longer the game went, and the more people that showed up on Realness and said Ryan's the reason I'm here, the more people would start to be resistant to what I had to say. Okay. And I know, don't you can shake your head, but that's.
But then let me pose this to you real quick. You had an opportunity, at least once, if not twice, when they did the videos, and Andrew brought up, especially with the Wheel of Fortune one. Andrew's like, "Do you want to say anything to, to Brandon?" And you kept pretty mum, and like that's your opportunity to really come across differently rather than just in text, and to show someone your personality. Because if you realize, we commented on that the next week, how charismatic Brandon was and how much we liked him. So do you think those were missed opportunities?
I mean, look, I don't.
Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, I don't really regret how things were going. What I didn't feel the need, what I thought Andrew was looking for, and what I didn't feel the need to do was to attack Brandon on video. That's what I felt. That's what I felt Andrew was looking for. Was he was looking?
But I'm not really. I was
fighting
more just kind of showing your personality in another way, not like going after Brandon, but just like, he was like highlighting you, like, hey, do you want to say anything? And you could just, make a joke. You could like talk about whatever, just show someone who you really are, if you were concerned about how you're coming across in text.
But in that moment, I wasn't, because nobody ever pushed back to me.
Well,
nobody ever.
This is the pushback.
Why I understand. No, I get that. But what I mean is, until that moment. No, I know. Until that moment, though, I'd never been pushed back on. Nobody ever said I was aggressive.
But no, and probably nobody will. But it's kind of just like the feeling that you get, that you tolerate and take as long as you can, and then when you have the opportunity to strike, you do. And so I think that like, I'm just like, from how I'm feeling, and just not knowing you very well, and just like having this little bit of interactions, if I were in the house with you and I was having similar interactions with you, I'd be like, nope, it's too much energy. Okay, no, I don't want. I can't manage that energy. So I feel as though you wouldn't be somebody that I would be comfortable bringing too far along into the game, because I would feel as though my voice wasn't necessarily heard, and your agenda would always be pushed, and I would be forced to take it, or to go along with it. And so that's just, as an outsider and having a few interactions with you, if people have been playing this game for you for the last 2 months, and they've had similar interactions with you, I'm not surprised by them having the opportunity to take out somebody that they didn't feel as though they were working well with. They were just kind of working under until they had the chance to strike.
Which is fair. But at some point when the ball is rolling, you have to keep the ball rolling. And at some point, I lost the ability to back off and stop playing as hard as I was playing. Because at that point, if you stop being that guy, then again, the interactions that you have with people, and I mean, Jonathan, you talked about it last week, right? When you were on the block and you knew you figured out you were going home because people stopped talking to you. Two weeks ago, I had a similar thing where I just didn't talk to somebody for 2 days because just, nothing came up. Again, like, real life was in the way, whatever. The week was moving along. I didn't need to think about it. And they wrote me and they said, is something wrong because you haven't reached out to me in 2 days? And I thought, at this point, like, I had now lived into and moved into a position where I didn't have the ability to put a full break on it and start taking other people's direction.
I love aggressive gameplay in general, but I think taking you out was also a move.
Oh, it's 100% a move. It's a great move. It's a great move.
Great move to have, and at this point, you don't have obvious moves to the jury, to Reality Realness, to the first person of the jury. I think it was a great but there were other moves that could have been. So I think like laying low for 2 days with one person that's going to go and on the block is never good. I think that's
like I said, I don't regret taking my eye off to what I focused my attention on.
and that's totally fair. Like,
And so
real life matters most.
yeah, I focused my attention on what was going on outside of the Big Brother Cheesecake game. I don't regret that, even if it meant that I was evicted, and I was evicted. So, but I don't know if that would have changed anything if I was talking to everybody, if they still wouldn't have just fed me shit all day and then voted me out anyway. Like, I don't know. You know, we can go back and think about all the things that might have happened, but at the end of the day, I don't regret kind of getting everybody to say yes and just taking yes for an answer. It's, you know, I'm a sales guy by nature, and I sell products for a living. So when the customer says yes, you move on to the next customer. You don't come back the next day and double check that they still say yes.
Not if the slimy salesperson next to you came in with a better offer.
Yeah, sure, sure. I mean, I don't think anybody should have kept Curtis from a competition standpoint. There were competitions.
You threw them all to him. You know what I mean?
Well, no. Let's be clear. I arranged for him to win. I didn't throw them. There's a difference. Just like I let Nick win the veto by making sure that I said, give me, you know, I'll take the final win and I'll give you the veto, but I want a secondary prize. And we figured that out between ourselves. In the veto, the prize punishment veto that happened earlier in the season. So I was involved in who won almost every competition from start to finish. I did win 3 competitions on my own of those times. So I came out and I did what I needed to do. But in order for, I could have won the endurance comp. I was sitting there all night, no problem. I had won endurance comps in other games that lasted 30 some odd hours. It wouldn't have been an issue. But if I won that endurance comp, then I couldn't have nominated Brandon from the twist. So I needed Curtis to win that one. You know, I needed, because the department twist really kind of screwed up what I was able to do and what I was able to go for, because for 3 weeks I was trying to target Brandon. And so that meant that for 3 weeks, no one in accounting could win the HOH. And so we actively avoided it to make sure we could try and get Brandon on the block.
I hate that I have to leave. I really wanted to fucking take part in this one.
I'll never forgive you for this, JoJo, and I will hold it against you until the end of time.
I am so happy to hear that.
But enjoy your hike. I mean, I suppose that nature was going away later.
It was on his calendar.
It's on my calendar. I had a really crazy night.
I'm just breaking your balls, man. That's fine. We'll talk again.
He played Sequester Mini last night. So
I did.
How was that?
It was.
It's a private mini that he played.
Yeah.
So
maybe I'll send a link if anyone wants to watch later on. Congratulations, Ryan, on a great game. Have fun at Jury. Bye, Chantal. Bye, Jonathan.
Bye.
Talk soon. Can't wait to watch this.
Have a good hike. Keep a lot of battery in your phone.
It's not gonna happen. I'm like 34% already.
I have a question though. So obviously when Nena's game when she came back the second time, where she got the power from Canada, and then you got pretty much a similar power that allowed you to have safety for this whole time. Do you think that you could have maybe used that in a different way instead of still enforcing your agenda during that time? Maybe use it to actually lay low and maybe change your strategy a little bit, because I think that that was a really big opportunity for you to maybe switch up your gameplay and see if you'd have different results. Is
it fun to sit there and not try and run shit? Like, honestly, how much fun is it to just kind of like, how much fun is it to just pick up your phone once a day and see if you're involved? Like, if you're going to play the game, play the game. I don't play game. There's nothing I do in my life where I'm not playing to win. I don't play things for fun. Generically, like, I'm a hyper competitive person, and so being in there, like, yeah, I finished 9th again. I got further than I expected. honestly, I expected to be gone in the first 2 weeks. When Andrew asked me if I would play, I was like, yeah, that'll be a fun couple of days. I didn't expect to get to day 49. There's no way. I'd played the game before for the same reason why Ashley was immediately identified on day one as the mole, because we knew she'd played before. She was in the final two before. She wouldn't admit it despite repeated questions in the group chat about who's played this game before or who's played similar types of games before. And then she lied to everybody about her BB Clue stuff. Like, we knew on day one that Ashley was the mole, so I couldn't do anything to work with Ashley because every time I tried, she lied to me and was like, and tried to expose me and tried to come after me. So I couldn't do anything with her.
But I have a couple.
Because I know that goes back to before JoJo came in the first time with working with the mole. Yeah. There was no way I could legitimately bring her in to what I was doing.
It's not about working with her, but don't you think that leaving her and maybe Brandon or one or the other in the competition longer would have taken you out of the spotlight a little bit?
I mean, maybe, but at the same time, those two people can win HOH. And so if Brandon wins HOH, if Ashley wins HOH legitimately after I keep her in the game, she knows what I'm doing. She's played the game before, so she's going to put me on the block.
Do you know how many times she's won HOH before?
I don't. I didn't check.
Maybe she's never won it. You don't know.
I assumed that she was smart enough to have won the game where Ashley wouldn't have made her, or Andrew wouldn't have made her the mole. Now, she was bad at the mole, and I agree with you. She was a terrible mole because what she didn't do was engender trust with anybody. She like the secret to being a good mole is having some people that are completely with you and some other people that you fuck over, because then the people who fuck you over want to try and get rid of you. When you fuck over everybody, and I apologize for the explicit label that this episode's going to get, but when you mess with everybody, you end up as it being very obvious that you're the mole. Like everybody else had somebody that knows, and Ashley was the only. Everyone's like, no, she's been so. Like I said, I don't regret how I played the game. I'm just, I had the wrong name got drawn out of the hat effectively, because if Lindsay's name doesn't get pulled, nobody in that Final Five Alliance nominates me.
Well, I have a question for you though. So last week, Brandon talked about the Bye Bye Rai Rai.
Yeah.
Kind of plan.
Yes, Kat was in that. Right? I want to throw out that Kat
was successful. Like, if Brandon's watching this, would he be like, "Oh yeah, the plan worked"?
So Brandon and I had like a half-hour video chat yesterday about the game. There's literally no hard feelings. Like, the game is the game. There's no hard feelings within the game. So I knew about Bye Bye Rai Rai the day it started, because he invited Kat for some reason, because he thought he could flip her against me, which was never ever going to happen. And so I knew who was in that group, what they were saying the whole time. And Kat had been involved in a couple of side alliances with people where they would talk shit about me, and she'd come back and tell me about it, and then we would eliminate those people. So it was, and I feel bad for Kat, because I honestly think she's an incredibly valuable free agent at this point, because everybody assumed that she was somehow, I don't know, subservient to me, which is bullshit. Kat and I would talk all the time, and the two of us would decide on moves that we would make together. I was often the front man for those moves because I don't hesitate to do that. And Kat very much was a person that would talk to you about what was going on in your life, and talk to you about outside the game. I really only talk to people about the game itself. But I think Kat would be an incredibly valuable free agent for people to pick up. I think if you just wash her away at this point, you lose a very good ally potentially. But that's up to the house guests to decide how they treat her going forward. But yeah, I was amazed sometimes at the information people would bring back to me and say, I don't know how you don't see that we're working together when we've all voted in sync every single time. And the vote counts have been exactly what I'm telling you they're going to be every single time, including having Marson vote against the group on several occasions to build trust with Brandon. Because when Marson was voting with Brandon, as Brandon was voting against me, Brandon was telling Marson things, and he'd come back and tell me those things. So we had a fairly solid network, and including the strategy of going after the drivers in the beginning. Like, it's easy blood. There's 5 of them. Let's get rid of them all, and then we move forward.
Okay, so you have the perfect strategy to get to first member of the jury. How did you change this strategy so you could actually win the game?
I mean, eventually throwing the veto to CJ in the Deal or No Deal was the mistake, I think, because we could have we would have moved to a random chance of who was staying with the veto, as opposed to moved to a random chance of who was winning the next HOH. Because let's not forget, I won that HOH this week.
That sucks. Sorry.
And I got, and I got out. Is the karmic for Eric season, I got to stay as a result? I guess so. That's the universe paying me back a little bit. But I think, like I said, it came down to a random draw. It was 1 out of 8 was going to win the HOH, and there were 2 people that I didn't want to win HOH at that moment, and one of those 2 people won. So I took a 2 out of 8 shot at getting it, so that way. I mean, plus, let's not forget, CJ is completely inept. So keeping her in the game long term is good for everybody, because she can't win competitions. The only thing she won was thrown to her on purpose, and she's already gotten rid of the only power that she had. So I mean, clinging on to CJ at this point and trying to drag her to final 2, I think is probably the best strategy anybody's got, because I don't know that anyone within that house still respects her.
So who do you think's in danger of leaving this upcoming week?
I mean, with Brazil as HOH, obviously there's a new 5 of Curtis, Nick, Marson, Brazil, and who would be the other one? Oh, and Lindsay. So I would expect we'd see CJ and some combination of CJ, Brenda, and Kat on the block this week. That's if everything's going the way I thought it might go. But so, I mean, I think Brenda's already made noise that she might just want to be evicted because she's tired of playing the game. So that might happen. Well, when she watches this, it won't be too late. Fight to stay in this game, Brenda, because I think she has played masterfully so far. She has gotten information from everybody, and I think not a lot of people give her enough credit for what she's done. There are a lot of people outside who don't understand how deep a game Brenda has played and how good a game Brenda has played. I can tell you from my perspective that the amount of information she was able to get was always super valuable. She is relatively volatile, so she's going to explode on somebody else down the road. You need to keep people like that around. And so I think I want Brenda to go deep in this game, because I just, I liked what she was able to do, and I liked the level of gameplay that she was bringing.
So what are your feelings just in general about twists?
They're great. I got Canada saves, and I stayed in the real Big Brother house for another 7 days, and I made the jury. Twists in general, I mean, look, they're going to happen. It was a calculated risk to do what we did, and I looked at who would nominate me, and we all talked about who would stay or who would go on the block the next week, and there was a general consensus of who would go on the block next week, and one of those 2 people won the HOH. And so 7 out of 9 people had a plan to go forward, and 8 out of 9 won the HOH. So, I mean, twists are part of the game. There's something you have to deal with. It doesn't, I can't be bitter about it. It's the way the game was played, and it was the decision that we made. We had the idea to put the veto on CJ to eliminate Brandon. That was what we wanted to do, was make sure Brandon goes, and after that, deal with the consequences and adapt.
Now, Andrew today kind of, put someone on blast because he said that Charlene predicts winners. So I just want to have the potential of throwing some other names out there too,
Sure.
because he did reveal who the name was. Who are your final two? Who do you think will make the final two right now?
If I'm picking final two right now, I'm going to say Curtis is one of those seats, because if you look at his track record, he threw a couple comps he could have won. And when you look at what he's been able to compile from an information standpoint, and the fact that he's West Coast and not East Coast, that helps him for things too, I think. So Curtis is sitting there for sure. I think if he's smart, he brings CJ to the end with him, because then he'll win in a sweep. But if not, then I think he probably sits next to Brazil, maybe.
And who's your ideal final two?
I mean, my ideal final two, I want Kat to win. I don't care who she's sitting next to. I want Kat to win because Kat's awesome. She's a great person. She's a great human being. She's beat cancer twice. She's the big brother mom for all of the alumni that come to Toronto. She takes care of us. She lets anybody stay at her place and, can live there for a month if they need to. Like, Kat is an incredible human being. And so I want her to win on a personal level. From a game standpoint, I think Nick's played a hell of a game. I think Marston's played a hell of a game. I think Brenda's played a hell of a game. I think Curtis has a very good shot of just winning out and saying, fuck you all, I'm staying, and it doesn't matter, because I think he's got the potential to HOH veto his way all the way to the final. I think taking him out, not taking him out now, is going to be a bad mistake for most of the jury.
Do you think you have a shot at being invited into All-Stars? And if so, would you play?
Do I think I have a good shot of getting there? I think I have a better shot of getting there of anybody that's played and been evicted so far this season. Would I play again?
Invited 4.
Yeah, 4 people are invited. So, I mean, I feel like, and I don't, without trying to swell my head too much, I feel like the fact that I was Big Brother Canada alumni is going to let me play as often as I tell Andrew I want to play, which would include All-Stars. I don't know that Andrew would say, no, Ryan, you weren't one of the 4 best players on your season, because I have documented to him all the way along about why the week was going to go the way it was going to go, and I did it in advance, including things like people using their powers and people using vetoes and stuff. I was telling him the whole time what I was doing and why.
Yeah, he must have been salivating. So,
so I imagine, would I play? I think I'd want to know who else was playing, because I feel like I don't get to jury if I play again. So I don't know that.
Chantal, would you play?
I don't know. I've been thinking
of some like pre-game alliance right here, you two.
the reality realness with 3 S's. But there's only 2 S's on the YouTube channel.
YouTube, I know, because it's a big cluster.
Okay, so
I tried to change it because when I went to do, I did YouTube before I did Instagram, but Instagram didn't have 2 S's, so I made it 3 S's, but then I couldn't change the YouTube.
Okay, because when I went to subscribe, I searched for it, and I'm like, this isn't anywhere. What the fuck?
Sorry, so I'm going to see.
Anyway.
I'm going to try again. If I can
reality realness with 3 or 2 S's.
Yes, with between 2 to 3 S's.
Yes.
But no, I mean, would I play again? Yeah, I'd kill time. Like, I feel like this is a fun way to kill time. I didn't take the game overly seriously from like a, it was no different to me than turning on, Red Dead Redemption and playing that for a couple of hours. Like, it doesn't, it was a fun thing to do. I would totally love to do it again. But I imagine that given how 7 eviction interviews have gone so far, I don't imagine anybody kind of trusts me out of the gate on day one, before the game even starts. And so at that point, if you can't, that was my failing in Big Brother Canada, was not having a firm alliance by the end of week 1. And that was something.
Andrew.
Well, no, but let's. I can explain that further for anybody who might see this. If you are one of the subscribers to this channel who did not see any of the other content involving me and why Andrew was evicted, before that HOH competition, half the house said if you don't nominate Hamza and Andrew next week, no matter who wins HOH, you are going home in week 3 because you aren't able to compete in HOH. And so the only way that I felt like I could survive at that moment was to have the two of them up, rig the veto pick, which I did, and then convince everybody to throw it, which they were going to until they said there's a $5,000 prize attached, at which point everything fell apart. So prizes on veto suck, twists suck, unless they're twists that benefit me. No, but
what's your fandom in general? Like, so before like Big Brother Canada, like, are you a Big Brother super fan, or are you like, what's your?
Well, so it's funny. So before I got on the show, I would have said super fan because I've watched every episode for 20 years of a variety of different versions of the game. I didn't, I would be on live feeds occasionally. I would more check live feed clip sites rather than watch live feeds themselves on a couple of different seasons, and I would watch the show. My issue though is that while I have an encyclopedic knowledge of the game, the strategies within the game, and how the game works and how it can be played. What I don't remember is that in season 14 of the US in week 6, X person got evicted. Like, the game takes up a lot of space in my brain from a strategy perspective, but not from I remember how you played your season perspective. And so, I do spend time before I go out, because when I go meet people, I will go back and refresh myself on their game, before I go have dinner or whatever, just in case it comes up, because I don't want it to seem like I don't remember. But like, if you asked me to name the 100 people that have played Big Brother Canada, I absolutely couldn't do it. But I could tell you the strategies the winners used and some bad strategies that have been used throughout the seasons. So that's kind of where
I think that's still super fandom.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the hardest of the hardcore said, no, this guy's not a super fan because he doesn't know what happened in this week on this day. And I'm like, okay, sure, yeah, I get that, but I do know the game incredibly well. I've watched the game in its entirety. And so, it's just how much you dedicate to it. Same thing with Survivor. Can I name all 40 Survivor winners? No, I can't. But I've watched every episode of Survivor for 40 seasons. So it's just kind of what
I'm the same way. I have a terrible memory, so I've watched every episode of everything pretty much. But because I've watched so much, I don't remember these people.
Exactly. Well, that's it too. I mean, like I've watched. I'm doing somewhere around kind of 4 to 5 hours worth of television watching a day. I don't have the brain. Nobody, I think, has the brain capacity to absorb that much material for as long as I've been doing it, and then hold on to that and have it at a recall knowledge.
Rob and Taryn, I think you're fans of.
Yes. Yeah.
Like those two, I'm like, how do you remember these things when they do their like This Week in Survivor or whatnot? They're just like, they remember everything, and like I'm always very impressed because I'm like, I've seen every episode for sure. I've watched some seasons twice for sure, and I still do not recall like, remember when Reagan when he did that thing to that person, and then this person went, and I'm like, I'd have to watch it back. No. Actually, my mom's a super fan, and so she had better recall on some situations than I do. I'm like, maybe because I watch more stuff, but like some people just got that. I don't.
No, I think those guys, I mean, that's their living.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm far more in depth into fire protection than I am into Survivor, because fire protection pays my bills. Right. If Survivor paid my bills, I'd probably know a little more. But yeah, I digest so much that I just kind of, it all comes out. And I made several mistakes in my season that people were like, hey, I thought you were a super fan. How do you have that so wrong? And I'm like, I'm mixing it up with something else, I guess. You know.
What other reality shows are you a fan of?
I'm deep in the challenge right now. I've got of the home family draft. I'm doing very well this season, and I think I love the idea of the skulls twist, the red skull twist. I think it's fantastic because what it does is it doesn't allow people to skate by. You have to earn your shot at the final as opposed to just being not enough of a target. And so I think that that's incredible. Plus, I think it's going to make for the strongest final that they've ever seen because you are only getting strong competitors into the final. So I think it'll be very competitive. So I'm deep in the challenge right now. As far as other reality shows I watch, I mean, if there's reality competition, I used to watch The Amazing Race.
Oh, Drag Race.
Oh, drag. Oh. So I had never watched an episode of Drag Race before I was on Big Brother Canada. Never seen one ever. And Johnny and Olivia were talking about it in the house, and they were like, "Oh, it's a great show. You should check it out." So I got home and I said to my wife, I said, "Well, why don't we watch an episode? Why don't we watch an episode and see what it's like?" Now we've watched all 12 seasons. So in the last 12 months, I've watched 12 seasons of Drag Race, one season of Drag Race All-Stars, because when we find out the winner, it kind of spoils things for us, so we don't go back and so you'd see like somebody come out on Drag Race and it would be the All-Stars 2 winner, and you're like, well, I guess I don't need to watch All-Stars 2 because I know who wins.
I will say that show I can recall more than any other show. I think it's just personalities and some like really memorable, line moments. So, but
there are also queens that I will never recognize. Like if you went home in the first couple episodes of your season and I wasn't pissed that you left, then I'm not going to remember you. Like Dahlia Sin this season, I was like, I guess. I like when she showed up on the finale, I was like, I don't even remember who that is.
Broccoli. She needed the broccoli.
Yeah, exactly. I remember more about the broccoli than I do about the queen. Like I don't remember who's in broccoli. I just know that broccoli exists, So it's kind of, I'm heavy into Drag Race. And tomorrow is All-Stars 5. And then Drag Race Canada on July 1st. And I was like, I tweeted at Brooklyn Heights for a year once I found out that she was going to be hosting to do anything involved with Drag Race. I don't even care if it's the bring in the straight dummy and dress him up challenge. I'm here for it. Anything to be involved with that, I would do it in a heartbeat. Drag Race Canada.
Maybe we can just get happen. We do have some connections in that world a little bit.
So well, if you know someone, you tell them that for season 2, because season 1's done, obviously. For season 2, anything, and I will anything. Sign me up. I'm ready. But
a little bit. I know I asked the question, but just to get back to Cheesecake, is there anything else about your game that you want, that you feel that you want to share with everybody? That you feel that anything.
I feel responsible for a lot of the game so far, and other people might argue with that and might say that they're equally responsible for the game so far. And at that point, I would tell them that they weren't paying attention to how I was doing things.
But I feel like that's like, it's one of those things where it's like someone loads the gun, the other person pulls the trigger, someone gets hit with a bullet. Like everyone's involved in a different aspect. So
I was making the guns and the bullets. That's how things came to be. And when people would come on your show and say the dictator is running things, 100% I agreed with it. I would sit in my office and bitch and moan and whine while I was watching you guys that my game was so out there and in public, because I was
from the get-go we were around.
Yeah, I know.
We were as tight-lipped as we possibly
can. I know. But then don't do that either. Because I also think at some point that there are people who were pulling the trigger and not getting any credit for pulling the trigger either. Because it's one thing to say I would tell people who the nominees should be every week, and I did, and they were. But on top of that, they still had to actually make that decision. So I think a lot of people still within the game think that by getting rid of me, somehow that's going to make their game better. You still had to actually execute what I was suggesting you should do in order for it to happen. So I think that there are people who are not getting credit for making moves because somehow it became my move. And even though I think I started the thing, and I'm my head is swelling huge here, and I don't even regret it.
They probably don't want the credit. They probably
don't want the credit. And I think what the people in the house need to do is remember that just because I tell you to do something and you do it doesn't mean that I was the one that did it. You still did it. It was just my idea.
Well, the savvy player might allow people to think it was their move, and
nah, fuck it. You can dine out on cheesecake and savvy all day.
I'm still learning to appreciate Chantel's game. I'm still finding out things that she did that were behind the scenes, and I'm like, ugh. But I'm like you. I want to play hard. I want to win everything, and it was very hard for me to take a backseat in any competition. And that was a lot of my downfall, I think, where Chantel was happily just like, controlling which way the river flows behind the scenes, but, making sure it's going in the right direction. And when it doesn't, being able to assess and then implement a new way or a new path that benefits her.
And legitimately, I still thought that the river was a straight line. Like, let's not forget that every single person that I wanted gone was gone. Every single nomination I wanted to happen had happened. Every single veto choice that I wanted had happened. Half the HOHs that I wanted to win in that week won. And I think, and in fact, more than half. So at no point did anything deviate, and it didn't look, and from all the information I got between Tuesday night and Wednesday night at 9, the river was still going in the same direction.
And like I said, I do think it was close. I think it wasn't like cut and dry. This is what you were set up to happen. I think.
I don't think it was a decision that was made until Wednesday. Yeah. But as I went to bed on Tuesday, it was fine. When I watched the video on Tuesday morning, it was fine. It was Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday afternoon that everything shifted. And credit to Curtis for pulling it off. And I think more credit than Nick will take to Nick for doing it, because if Nick isn't on board, then nobody else does it, because Marcin listens to Nick, Brazil listened to Nick, Lindsay listens to Nick, everybody listens to Nick. So I used Nick frequently throughout the season because I knew that everybody trusted Nick, so I would ask Nick to parcel out information so it didn't seem like it was coming from me. I asked Curtis a lot of times to tell Nick specifically what to say and do, and then Curtis would tell Nick, and Nick would go out and say and do that. So I think there are a lot of people, I think, who don't understand how comfortable Nick feels right now, I think. But anyway,
feels comfortable. To be fair, at this point, it's pretty amped up, and you're kind of like on guard the whole time. One way to not get evicted is to not be nominated. So, do you think you could have prevented yourself from being on that block? I know that you said that she was one of the 2 people that were your least, favorable for you if they won. But was there something that you could have done in that moment, or were you just relying on the fact that you thought you had the numbers?
Yeah, I think I can identify that one mistake. So before the HOH competition happened, Lindsay asked me if she would go up if I won HOH. And I said, honestly, Lindsay, I said, I'm going to be nominating CJ for sure because I want her to go home, because again, I knew that she was actively and aggressively talking shit about me. So I needed her to go. Because anytime somebody talks shit about you even a little bit, even if people aren't listening, they're still listening. And the longer that goes on, the worse it is for you. But CJ, so I needed CJ to go. And I said, somebody has to sit next to her. And I'm not sure who it's going to be yet. If I had said, Lindsay, 100%, you're not going on the block next week, it would be CJ and Marcin. I don't think I go up. I think Marcin goes
Did
up
you
next to
throw
Curtis.
the veto to CJ though, or Kat did? How did that?
Yeah, we threw the veto to CJ to get rid of Brandon. It's because it was week on week. Because if we don't throw the veto to CJ and Kat wins the veto, Kat would have been forced to use it on someone, and then CJ would have triggered her Emerald power, which would have meant a 1 in 3 shot that Brandon stays. So if
but you would have been still here probably this week because you still would have won. But
shit happens. But you can't know that going forward, right? Going forward, we knew the risk was there that CJ could win HOH and I'd be on the block too. But again, everybody I was talking to said, even if you're on the block, as long as it's not against me, I'm obviously going to keep you. So and that stayed a consistent theme all the way through the entire time was, yeah, even if you're there, we're still good and I'll save you. So the idea that it flipped last minute, which again is how the game works. I mean, Andrew has said all along that, votes were flipping this week. They weren't flipping. We had made the decision before the nominations on who was going home. They just were solidified after the veto results, because you decide who's going home when you've got the HOH in your hand, which the final 5 did in 5 of the first 6 weeks. We had HOH in our hands that whole time. So we decided who would go home, but then we wouldn't talk to people about it until after the veto results. So it always seemed like it was a late decision, but it never was. We knew who was going home from the minute they were nominated every single week. And unless they won veto and pulled themselves off, which nobody did, then we didn't have to worry about it.
So who do you think is pulling the strings moving forward? Did I ask you this? I don't think so.
I mean, pulling the strings, I think obviously Nick's in charge right now. Nick's in charge, and Curtis is going to fight him for being in charge. However, they might also just decide, like, I think Nick, Marcin, and Curtis have a final 3, and I think anybody else that's hearing any differently is being lied to. So I think Nick is playing the best social game right now, I mean, Curtis has a shot, but I think Curtis has to win out to get there. He's going to have to go veto HOH the rest of the way, even if he doesn't end up on the block this week. I don't think Brazil takes him out, but she should have. She should have before she took me out, for sure, because Curtis is a hell of a lot better at these competitions than I am. I'm just better at engineering who wins.
Yeah, I'm surprised at the people who have left, only in the fact that the last couple of weeks have been some of the more obvious choices, where I think it's more dangerous leaving in people who are less obvious, and you should leave in the people who are the obvious choices and take out the ones that you're not even thinking of. That's just my personal opinion.
The problem with that, though, Jonathan, is when you've got, at that point, like headed into this week, we'd been working with Nick, Lindsay, Marcin. I'd been working with Nick, Lindsay, Marcin, Brazil, like everybody else that's left except CJ. And so if you target one of those people, you break that trust. And so now is at the point where that trust has to be broken, because that collective 8 had been voting together and working together this entire time. And that 8-person alliance, even though it was never an official alliance, taking one of those people out would have broken everything, and you have to restart building trust and restart building alliances all the way. So we had what we thought was a core 5 with 3 people on the outside of that core 5. And this was the week where the outside of that core 5 would have gone. It was because Lindsay won. Otherwise, if Lindsay doesn't win, Lindsay and CJ are on the block. Marcin probably ends up as a replacement nominee, or Nick ends up as a replacement nominee, and then you make the hard decision on whether or not you cut them at that point. But
I mean, we were able to kind of have a larger alliance kind of narrowed down in our season. And I mean, Chantel didn't touch the block. Jojo didn't touch the block. I didn't until I put myself on there with the Pooh Brown veto. So, I mean, going on the block's dangerous. And
you're telling me.
There just seems to be so many, just so many different options this year with anyone going on. But I don't know what to expect, to be honest with you.
Oh, for sure. But I've got a 60% survival rate of being on the block. So I've been on the block officially 5 times, and I've survived it 3 of those 5 times. But look, I got. It sucks to suck, and And unfortunately, random draw is why I'm sitting here. Because if the right person wins HOH, or if anybody, I think, other than Lindsay or CJ won HOH, I wouldn't be here. One of them would be. And it would have been a lot less time you would have spent listening to somebody talk.
Well, on that note, well, thank you so much for sharing your game with us. We're going to do a little dissecting of it after, and
of course,
with the rest of the week, but we definitely enjoyed having you come on here. We obviously have the door wide open if you want to come chat with us later on in the game. Maybe we'll do a jury's, maybe we'll get Andrew to allow us to do a jury's take on the final two or the final three. Maybe we'll do something like that. But we definitely, we love you having your opinion. You definitely were, a strong player in this game. We were really interested in what you were bringing to the table, what you had to show us. You made, podcasting about it interesting, because we're kind of like, in the beginning, we're like, oh boy, like we're going to be commenting on Andrew and his, his Emmy Award winning
look,
out skits.
Andrew needs to stop drinking that Jello. Just let's put that out there. Andrew needs to stop drinking that Jello.
Did it again today.
Not any good anymore. He did it again today. Stop drinking the Jello. It's a terrible choice for you digestively.
So yeah, you definitely made podcasting about this season fun, and so I hope you enjoyed coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing this. I will talk to you guys as often as you want to have me on to talk shit. I'm happy to do that. You guys made the game a lot more fun too, because it's one thing to watch Andrew do what he does, but you guys as a relatively objective third party gave this a lot more. It was a lot more fun, and the house guests talk about your show all the time, like try and dig into whether or not you're giving clues to the game within the game. Like there's a lot of stuff that people do. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch all this stuff every day and comment on it, because it made it seem like a lot bigger deal than I'm talking on Facebook Messenger for Cheesecake. So it made it seem a lot better. So I really appreciate it.
It's totally our pleasure. We honestly, we love doing it. We find it super fun. We're super fans of the Big Brother game in general. We both played Cheesecake, so we have an idea of what you guys are going through. And so we really wanted to cover your experience. And I do feel like it elevates the experience as well, because oh wait, people are watching what I'm doing.
Right, for
let's
sure.
make it good. Let's make it good. So we're happy that you appreciate it and we enjoy it.
And to that note, if anybody out there is looking for a fun Big Brother game to play, I just want to hype up Big Brother Quarantine. Is a game that's been run by, her name's Kathy. She's the one that organized the GoFundMe for Jamar. She plays Arissa Cox and does a forum-based game, and everything's done online on the forum. She plays like a 30-person season over 16 days. It's just this wild, fast-paced game. And she's currently casting season 3. You are not supposed to play as yourself. You're supposed to play as a character of your choice, and nobody's real identities is revealed until the end. So you can find a link for it on my Twitter feed at BBCanRyan. I'll tweet out the link. And get in there if you want to play some sort of crazy, Big Brother type game, and Andrew isn't letting you on Cheesecake. Get into Big Brother Quarantine. It's awesome. It's so much fun. I was playing that at the same time as this at the beginning of the season, and it was a little crazy. But yeah, I love the game so much, and I really just wish that JoJo would show the same sort of dedication that the two of you show, because. I mean, obviously, with his phone battery problems and his hikes and everything else, it just, if he could just commit and not try and be the Megan of reality realness, that would be appreciated. By the way, hi, Megan.
Hi, Megan. Okay, thank you so much, Ryan. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You bet.
Bye.
Talk soon.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye.
I changed. Oh.
Well, Ryan had a lot to say. What do you think? How do you think that went?
First of all, hi, Megan.
Hi, Megan. We miss you.
He had a lot to say. I think it was really informative. but at the same time, I thought that we had a lot of perspective to kind of give him that maybe he hadn't received before. So maybe if he can, when he watches this back, if he kind of like hears it, I mean, I hope it didn't come off as harsher than it needed to be, because it wasn't from that angle. We're just trying to like, you know, awaken him to kind of what happened, because often people come on here, they say they know what happened, they think they know what was happening in the game, and they think they know how they were perceived, and it's not the case. And so, and it's hard to remove yourself sometimes and really see yourself in it from someone else's perspective. So,
and I know that it was kind of thrown around a little bit, the word aggressive, which is we were trying not to make it sound aggressive, using that word, but I think more so maybe bossy, or I think I even talk about it. We talked about it in day 45 about how Megan said that, or the dictatorship, you know, is you know, and I'm assuming that they're referring to him. And so, what qualities would a dictator have? Telling people what to do, people not feeling heard, people feeling as though their opinion is not as respected as the other, feeling as though the dictator, it's their way or the highway, like it's the only way that it goes. And I feel like those are the characteristics that people were feeling from him, regardless if it was his intention. And he feels as though he might be open and people can come and talk to him, but that's not necessarily the door that people wanted to go through, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think he was very open to hearing what we had to say and trying to understand it. You know, we did have a conversation with him afterwards as well. It continued a little bit personally, but it's one thing, and it's great to be open and to wanting to hear it and learning from it and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you need to be ready to receive that, and it takes a while and to really sink in. So, yeah, I mean, I share a lot of his qualities where it's like, I mean, mine are probably even worse in some respect, where I'm like, I don't give a, you know, and I want to win, and I just want to, you know, play hard because it's like, I want to have fun. But, you know, I'm sure he's disappointed for not lasting longer. And I do think that he played a good game, just with a few mistakes in the last few weeks, and just playing too heavy, too strong, you know, and not being fully aware that this was inevitable if that type of gameplay was to continue. Like there wasn't, oh, if, you know, this person won this, then then I would have, yeah, you would have been HOH this week, but let me tell you, they would have been going after you next week, because you were in that prime position to kind of go home with how you've been playing.
Especially after your safety is over. And we do talk about it a little bit later or earlier this week about how, you know, what Andrew thinks his fatal errors may have been. And I think he had a few. And I know
power move. It's like people want to be like, I got out, you know, this person, look at me, right? So they want to build their resume, especially now in the game. We're more than halfway through. So,
well, and also if somebody has been running the game and calling all the shots and steering the direction of the game, well, you get out that person that's steering everything, and don't you get to take the wheel now? So I feel as though, yes, he played a good, strong game. I feel like it was an aggressive game in the sense that his voice was being heard. Like he was in the forefront. He was in a lot of the conversations, whether he was the one that was voicing these conversations to Andrew or others, he was who people were comfortable with allowing to be the figurehead. And what do? You want to take down the figurehead. You want to move them out of the way so you can step up and take control. And I think that he was blinded by the fact that people were doing what he said, that he didn't see that they were coming to take him out.
Exactly. Yeah, that's well put. But I mean, thank you for coming on the show. Really enjoyed you. Actually, personally, I actually like him a lot. And I agree. If it was all video, I mean, it shouldn't be. That's not the game. But I'm just saying, if people could really kind of, you know, speak to him, they would, I think, understand him a lot better.
For sure.
And so, but I think he's, well liked. It was just the position that he was in the game because he put himself in that position.
Yeah, gotta chill sometimes, just a little bit. Just gotta.
I mean, it's hard for me too. It's hard.
No, I
You're
know.
like you're queen at it because
It's a struggle though. I was telling Jojo, I was like, I don't know. Like, I have the same thing. Like, I definitely have to pay very close attention to how I come across to people, especially in terms of like all the movement and all that stuff. Like, you kind of learn how to kind of take a step back for sure. But even as a baby, like I loved puzzles from when I was about 18 months, and I'd be doing a puzzle with my mom, and I'd hit her hand and be like, no, mommy, no, when she'd put a puzzle piece in the wrong spot, and this is at less than 2 years old. And so I was always called bossy boots, bossy pants, leader, like.
And she didn't hit you?
No.
You didn't have Portuguese parents, let me tell you right now.
No Portuguese parents for me. And so anyways, I definitely have learned that to allow people to do what they want to do and try to steer it to be in the direction that I want, right. As opposed to always taking the leadership position, always taking the bossy boots position. I've learned how to be a subordinate.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of, he was talking about his job and kind of what position that he falls into at work. But, it's and what's going on in society right now. It speaks a lot of, there's a lot of privilege given to certain people, and they don't need to learn those skills sometimes in life. And it's unfortunate because being, completely well-rounded will really help you in this game. Knowing your faults and your flaws can really help you. And like you said, it's a struggle, for you that you have to kind of control it. I mean, you were really good at it. I wasn't as much. And, but it's something I want to better myself to do. It's definitely for the game and just in life in general, just to, learn to, like you said, take a back seat sometimes.
Like, if I push my agenda and it's not being heard, then I'm like, okay, either I have to figure out a new tactic as to how I can get them to hear me, or I have to change, or I have to pivot and make their agenda mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, and that's kind of how I operate now when in these types of games. It's different in life, obviously. If I'm really standing behind somebody, that might be the friendship thing, but like in the game though, it would be my opportunity to pivot.
And I think there are some people in the game still who are doing a great job at it, because I've seen moments of gameplay flare up and then they kind of like take a backseat for a moment. So I think there's some really strong competitors left in the game, and I don't know who's fooling who at this point. I think there's maybe one or two people who are being strung along, but I think the majority of them at this point are good game players, and I really have no idea where it's going to go. I think it's going to come down to who wins HOHs, and
right now it's all about who wins the power. Like, this is how it's going to dictate from this point forward. And what I like about it this point forward is most of the games, if they're a similar format as they have been in the previous seasons, it's going to be that they have it in their own hands. It's not going to be as chancy, like maybe Monopoly, but if you have the pieces, like, you'll do better. And
I couldn't play Monopoly, but I was in the game still. Why couldn't
Oh, because you had to use the Poovita. I was trying to figure out there's 7 people left, and I was like, why didn't Jonathan play? And I was so confused.
I was there. I was like, yeah, I think I had the light blue property. Here, I'm coming up with a new curse. Whoever has the light blue properties, you're screwed.
Well, or the railroads. That's pretty bad too. Wasn't that's what Julian had, the railroads?
I forget. Mine got like recycled, or I had to give them to someone.
I might have had them, or so, I don't know.
How did I win 3 POVs and a HOH and only get like 1 set of properties?
I don't know. I only got properties because I won one, and then I got somebody that exited or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to day 45. We will end up talking a little bit more about Ryan's game as it comes up during the week. So day 45, a little bit over a week ago, it was basically, the saddest day, I think, in Cheese Brother. Big Brother Cheesecake history is Megan and Brandon going out, and Megan didn't go out quietly, which I was happy about. You know, I like going out with a bang. I've played other games before where I didn't make it all the way to the end, and so I like leaving with a bang. I find it, you know, it's fun. It's entertainment, right?
I would not go out any other way. Stir the pot, you know, make it difficult for the people still left in the game.
Absolutely.
You need to earn that.
Give them a F you. Like, you know, you should have managed me better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, sad day, Brendan and Megan, specifically Megan. I was blindsided by it, I think. I was disappointed.
So Megan at that point said, "Who is the dictator?" And so I think, though, that she was speaking of Ryan as being the dictator.
I would agree.
And so I think that seems very indicative, though, of the regime that the house guest feels that they might have been underneath at that moment. So you always say, "Yes, king," you know, like you kiss that ring, you bow, you go along with what they have to say until you have the opportunity to strike. And I think that is what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what happened here? So the lime. Oh, Brazil won lime? Oh, she didn't play. Okay, so Brazil didn't play Prank or No Prank. She ended up winning. It would have been lime, and that she wouldn't be able to play in 3 vetoes. This late in the game, that would be brutal. Veto is probably more important, I would say, right now than head of household, because like you just get to keep yourself safe without stirring the pot in a negative way, you know?
Some of the pranks are this year, this season, they've been tough, and there's like tough ones to come. So I don't know that I would play. And I was gung-ho last year about it. I was like, yeah, let's do this. But I'm like, they've been really rough.
And this one is including if you're nominated. I'm like, what? Like, I would be like, I would probably quit the game. I'd be like, Andrew, this is far from fair. This is far from tampering. Like, that's just like, I mean, you can get out of it for sure. Like, obviously, there's way to maneuver any situation, but like that one is just tough.
It is tough.
I wouldn't bother risking it.
You know what? If I ever come back into the house, I'm not going for any of these dive deep pranks or whatever you want to call them. I'm not going to do it. I'm not doing anything.
He's going to go. You're going to have to change something, Andrew. So that's pretty much what happened day 45. Day 46. So we found out last week that Lindsay ended up winning the power of veto, or the head of household, because she was a random draw. Now, how do you classify this? Did Ryan end up winning that, or did Lindsay, like, who has the title of that head of household?
So, well, Andrew did say in a video that Ryan will be credited with the win. I don't know if that then includes Lindsay as well. You know, on the leaderboard, not quite sure, but definitely him. So he gets, for sure, 100%. You won HOH. You just got it taken away from you.
So yeah, I think, how I would maybe phrase it is that Ryan won the head of household, but Lindsay usurped his power.
Right.
And ended up taking him out, essentially. That's like off with his head.
Like, bring out the guillotine, right?
It is, though. It's like, I'm taking the power from the king and slaying.
You're gonna do it like that, yeah.
Well, sure. She kind of has to, and it seemed as though they weren't working together, from what I can tell. So she didn't really have any choice. And you know, if what he's been saying is true, that he's been working with who was it, Brenda and Curtis, like putting up him and Curtis is probably a pretty good idea, especially since they've both been quite strong, both been winning, and both seeming to have a lot of power in the game. So I would probably, I thought he was going for sure. Like, I thought it was going to be him and Kat, to be fair, but I did think he was going to be going up and going out.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, especially the last, like I said, a couple weeks, it's almost inevitable. Unless, you know, people who he's really, really close with were winning HOH or himself, I think it was inevitable that he was going to be on the block and probably going home. Again, because of the position that he's put himself in.
Now, he was pretty upset about the fact that his head of household was usurped. At this point, he didn't know he was going home yet at this point. But do you think that was poor game management? Because, like, why didn't he run this? Like, I know that he ran the stats and being like, well, only 2 out of the whatever people left are bad for my game. Like,
Yeah.
shouldn't he have taken control of that beforehand? Like, I would have.
You know, he kept talking about managing, like asking someone once and trusting that. And I'm like, and in what world? Like you've been in the house too. You know everyone's lying to you. You know everyone's like, you can't trust anything. The only thing you can do is really assess what is in people's best interests. So, and then his rebuttal to that is, well, if I kept asking them, they would definitely change their. I'm like, absolutely not. I actually disagree with that. If you kept asking them and they wanted to keep you, it's because it's in their best game. You can ask them 15 times. You can ask them once. If they're going to keep you, they're going to keep you. You have to show them why it's in their best interest to keep you, rather than just ask them and then trust their word on it. I didn't understand why that he kept reiterating that. Like that was supposed to mean something.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Because like it was different in the case of like Alvin was really upset with me when I was like questioning him and the Pubito, because I was like, if you did it, it's okay. Like, I'm not mad. Let's move forward. I just like, because Jonathan is so, I 100% didn't do it. I'm just asking you again, 100% if you didn't do it. And if you did, it's okay. You know what I mean? And so the fact that I was asking him, like, just to make sure he was offended by that. So I can see where he's coming from, where, like, the over asking is that shows distrust.
Well, I mean, you also had a different relationship with Alvin than the average person in the game. So it's like, if his close connection, like he referenced, Kat, I mean, if it was Kat that he was asking specifically, and then, yeah, you could probably, same with me and JoJo. And I didn't know JoJo preseason. I trusted what JoJo said 100%. And I think, it's probably, well, as close to 100% as you can. But I think it's, I tried to lay out all his possible options in the game. And I was like, oh, his best game is keeping me. And so I didn't weigh in, and I know he's a player, so I didn't weigh in JoJo's loyalty to people that I didn't know that he knew pre-game. And I actually thought that potentially, I mean, for me, I was loyal to him 100%.
I believe you. He believed you.
Yeah, so it's like, and I do get that, so I do understand the loyalty element of it. But you can only be, you can't just say, oh, I asked these 4 people and they all, said yes once. I mean, yeah, if it was Kat, you're not going to ask Kat 15, 20 times because it's going to piss her off.
Well, and also what I may have done if I were him is start planning for the following week, because that's a way to, A, make people feel a bit guilty, and B, give them an opportunity to slip up. You know what I mean? They can be like, oh, well, they could slip up if you're talking about.
And it presents them opportunities to see going forward in the game a different way with him in it.
Exactly.
So there's like 3 elements to it that is beneficial. Yeah.
Like, I know he was preoccupied with obviously the events of this past week, and understandably that it wasn't, his first priority. So I get the distraction 100%. But if we just take that aside, things that he could have done better would be to have been a little bit more engaged with these other players that he doesn't know that well, and find a way to be communicating with them, and so that they feel as though they're still working with him. Because like, if it was like radio silence and then Curtis is like, keep me, and they're like, okay, and he's like, keep me because blah blah blah, I'll do this for you, blah blah blah, like making deals, and Ryan is completely separate from that, then it's easy for them to be like, okay, we're change of plan. oh, Ryan hasn't even come back to me to ask me again. Like, I don't even have to lie to him. Okay, cool. Like, done. It's done. And so make it a little bit harder for them to lie to your face.
Yeah, exactly. And you should be checking in with people all the time, especially people. I mean, I didn't do it with you and Alvin so much because I did have that trust, in that initially. And so it was the Nicole and Julian's that we were trying to keep close. And initially the Kristas and stuff like that I was checking in with because I wanted to make them feel comfortable with me and making sure that we were planning stuff together.
Absolutely.
So you have to keep on top of people.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, I get it. But anyway, okay, moving on. Next.
Next. So wait, he was supposed to be a 222. That would have been cool. I would have loved to see the 222. Remember, I was trying. Well, but before you messed up the the poo vote, I wanted to split.
Hold on, but you know what? Caitlin was HOH, right?
Fucked up. She fucked up because I didn't want it to be split that way because I was at that point wary of what you might do. I was wary, and so I wanted to have the people that were in Mariana's Trench all on one side, so that I could no matter what, we could blame. I think it was you, was it you, Nicole, and Julian?
Yeah.
So I think I wanted all of you guys on one side, and people who I trust for sure was me, JoJo, and Alvin on the other side. So if you or Julian decided to flip, it would have been very obvious, and we could always just say it's Mariana's Trench, right?
Yeah, that's good.
That's what I wanted to happen, but then Caitlin just went like, bah! And she just said the teams. I was like, I messaged after, like, Caitlin!
Well, I loved when Caitlin, and we haven't talked about that in a while, the fake, the hat, the name and the...
Oh my God!
Remember that? I loved that. I was living for it at the time. But there was something about that week with Caitlin where I'm like, she's not going to get her way. It was just everything. It was the bullying aspect. It was I was becoming closer with Krista, and it was just like, and that was definitely an element that I thought about a lot where I'm like, I am not letting Caitlin get her way. And so, but I would have loved to, Caitlin never responded to me a lot during text, and she never connected with me. I was always me reaching out to her the few times that I did. So I would have loved to work much closely with her. Because I thought some of those moves were fantastic, but I was like, no, I need to get you out. Sorry.
Oh, man. Things had gone the way that I wanted them to.
How did she go? I don't even remember.
Didn't you vote her out?
But who put her up? I don't even know.
I don't remember right now. Wasn't it you?
No, I wasn't HOH. I was HOH.
I was pissed about it.
I think it might have been JoJo, because I feel like there was one week where he was like, it was when he was starting to, because it was, she left the week before I did, right? So it was Nicole, Krista, Caitlin, and then myself, I believe. So JoJo put her up. Yeah, because he wouldn't put me up, but I was getting suspect about a few things.
Was it JoJo and Julian won stuff?
That's exactly what it was. You're right. Julian won again because he kept winning.
And Veto time or no? Not yet. Is that the next week?
I don't remember, but I remember he won veto, and then it was like he didn't have a choice. But things were dicey, guys. Things are gonna get dicey in the game for you. It's gonna get difficult. You're gonna hate. It doesn't matter if you're making move A or move B. You're gonna hate it, and it's gonna relationships that you've made. You're gonna have to like turn on people. Oh, it's getting good.
It is getting good. I mean, I thought it was really interesting on this day, actually, because, like, as much as I love to hate all the voices, he has to stick with it if he's going to go with it. Because on this day, he was doing all the talking for Lindsay without that super fast Speedy Boys. And I was like, that's not fair. You're just at least she's coming across normal. Like, anyways, I remember just writing down, like, where's her super fast Speedy Girl voice? And he was just speaking
like, you made it up, Andrew. Stick with it.
Exactly. Like, I was like, So, I mean, there's other stuff that went on that day that's not fully that important. Curtis feels he has been Anyways, I don't know what I wrote there. We'll go in the next day, day 47. Yeah, it was. I felt it was so confusing that I just blacked it all out. So I think it was talking about the veto, all the veto like ways to use it. So I think it was the sapphire veto that I was just like, I don't remember how to use this particular veto, because I remember we were so annoyed because we wanted to use it at one point, but then he came in with, oh, I forgot to tell you that if a nominee gets the veto, like, then you can't use this, it's a null and void. And so I remember we were all just like, ugh.
So he explained it again this week, and I've forgotten already.
That's it. I just explained it to you.
It's yeah. So hold on. It's you have. Wait, say that again.
So if the winner of the power of veto is not a nominee, they have to use it.
Right.
If no. If shit. If the
Why is this so confusing? This particular one, I cannot.
Okay, now let me say it again. If the winner of the power of veto,
Brandon
regular power veto, is not a nominee, the sapphire veto holder can change either if they used it on the person, they can change it to the other person, or if they did not use it at all, they can force them to use it.
This is like those times that I would go to a class and I would sit in the back because I didn't understand what was happening. And I would just be thinking about what I'm going to eat for lunch.
Exactly.
Moving on.
The veto holder, the sapphire veto holder, I don't know. Anyways, that's as much as I can get to it.
Brandon couldn't use it because, fill in that blank.
CJ won the golden power of veto.
That doesn't make any sense to me, but none of it does. I actually don't understand it still. I don't understand. You know, Andrew, when you were saying it, I was like, I got it for maybe 3 to 5 seconds, and then I don't understand it anymore. And I think Krista has since told me about. Krista messaged me about it and told me about it too, and I still don't know. So there we go.
Because CJ won the power veto and she was on the block, the sapphire veto isn't eligible to be used.
The sapphire power veto enables someone to veto a veto. So if a person uses a veto that they won to save someone, the sapphire power can say, nope, the other person is going to be saved. Or if the veto isn't used, but you want to force it to be used, I think it can do that too, is what Krista says.
But if the veto winner is on the block, the sapphire veto isn't eligible unless the sapphire veto holder is the veto winner as well.
The winner, yeah.
It had to be winning both if the person on the block wants to use a sapphire veto, which means I think that they can save the other person as well. And I think they're both off the block and then be 2 more nominees, I think. I don't know. Andrew, I know that you've explained it like 900 times, but like I definitely blocked it out because it's so confusing.
You know what? There's going to be a Pearl power of veto, and that's going to replace Sapphire and make it do whatever the hell you want it to do, just not veto a veto and all those little things.
Or if it vetoes a veto, it vetoes a veto. Like there's no
stipulations as to
if in this situation it does this, but it doesn't do this in this situation. But if it does this, and it doesn't do this, and it can do this. But yesterday, it too much.
Sapphire veto, return it. Thank you. Full refund.
Don't use it. So I asked this. We kind of talked about it a little bit before, but do you want to play All Stars? And does JoJo want to play?
I don't talk to JoJo outside of this. I have no idea. I have no idea if JoJo wants to play. I want to play, of course. I would never say no. Who did Ryan give a shout out to? Kathy, who's doing a Survivor thing. Kathy, give me a call. But
a 30-day.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do everything. I always want to play. I will never say no to it. I will always play to the best of my ability, and I would love to play All Stars if I was so lucky. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be phenomenal to play with a bunch of people who have had an impact in this game, a lasting impact. to really play it respectfully, to Andrew, like by having some really good gameplay and some twists and turns. I mean, who knows what will happen. And I think you can expect the unexpected, because I feel like going into it, you think some people will be loyal to some people, and you don't know what's happened after the shows, guys, with many of the seasons. So, and this season's so strong too. Some of the players, I mean, incredible. Yeah, it'd be really interesting.
Yeah, it should be interesting too. And I think also because like the mole was supposed to be part of season All-Stars, I'm curious if he has already figured out something to replace that, or like how he's going to maneuver and switch what he had intended on doing for All-Stars. So
right. Andrew has everything planned out like well in advance, and I mean, I'm so impressed with how he always interest. I can't say that word. The elements, let's say, of everything that he does for these games and plans them out and whatnot is just so in depth that I'm just like, I'm sure he has all of All-Stars planned out, knows what he's gonna do. Yeah, I wonder what the replacement for the mole aspect, if there is one, but I want to be the mole again. So
ooh, that'd be fun. I think it would be fun. Like if it was a savvy mole, could be very.
I want to be a twin. I want to be a twin going into the house and no one knows it. So the online version of that is catfish. I want to be a catfish.
Well, this is kind of what Ryan was saying. The other woman is you have to go as a character. So is that a catfish, or is that
Well, I think because everyone's a character in that game, it's like different. But I want to go in like, you don't know that I'm cast. You think I'm like you or something, and playing under a false pretense. Yes, absolutely. All-Stars Catfish Edition.
I wonder how that could work. I'm gonna have to workshop that in my brain, but I think that there's a way for that to work for sure. I thought it was awesome that he gave a Michelle shout out. I can't remember why he called out Michelle, but I was like, yes, Michelle shout out in the video. Obviously, I love Michelle. So he talks also about the jury chat and how he's gonna lock down on the jury chat. I think it was this episode. What do you think about how he is changing up the jury chat?
Well, we all knew what Caitlin was doing, so that's why we were doing what we were doing. I mean, I was doing what I was doing, was because I knew Caitlin was feeding it back to at least JoJo, and I would assume you. So I was very aware of that, and I know that a few others were very aware of that as well. So, I mean, I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it because it just allowed us to then influence the game a little bit by making you think one way or the other that, which way people are leaning towards. Although you will control that a little bit more, I think by us doing exit interviews and having potentially like some sort of jury thing that I don't know if Andrew will let us, but we can still, it can still be influenced. So I don't know how strict he will be with it. And how, I know you can't really police it. So, and people by that time will be desperate. They'll do what they need to do to get the game, to win.
Yeah, I think, I think at that point, everybody was going to be such a gamer that they wouldn't want to have a big asterisk beside either their name or their win. Like, I don't know, that pride level. I can't remember what he said. I thought I would remember what he said were the changes, but what was the penalties?
I don't remember any specifics other than he's going to
automatic poo veto.
No. Did you say that?
I think so.
No.
Okay, I have it written down. I must somewhere.
I thought he was just gonna have something in plan.
We talked about it on a different day. So he mentioned it that day, but he actually discussed it So no jurors are now to talk about the game of the house guest.
Yeah.
He will replace the juror is one thing.
Oh,
Or
he
the
did.
house
Yeah.
guest would get a poo ground veto. That's pretty pretty shitty.
Oh, I don't even remember the poo ground veto, but yeah, well, that's some seriousness right there.
So he didn't actually talk about it in this episode. So let's continue. What do you call about the Sword Swallower Alliance that was named by, I believe it was CJ, another the alliance namer.
I've forgotten all of them. I don't. It's
Did
like
did you
change
find
it every 5 seconds. There's 9,000 alliances. I don't know that I was fully paying attention, but what did you think about it?
They're just saying that Sword Swallower Alliance because it was the sword that Brandon fell on for them. So he discusses a new competition, the BB Total Recall competition, which I feel you would not have done very well in. Well, basically he showed a clip. It was of like an early 1990s.
Oh, excuse me. I won the photo one last year.
I didn't play.
I won that one. So we had to look at all those photos and all those albums. I studied it. I wrote out 9,000 pages of.
You weren't allowed to write notes, though. That was
You weren't allowed to reference. I mean, you couldn't, but I wrote it out just so I could recall. And I won that one. I think I did. I'm pretty sure I won that one.
I think you did.
Yeah,
but it had 2 elements, so it didn't have Connect 4 with it as well. So.
Yeah, because I was playing that with Rhonda and Krista, I remember, and yeah, and Rhonda was really good. Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
I think I barely beat her. Yeah.
I thought it was a pretty good challenge. I really wish, though, that. I mean, I know that he talked about it in the next episode when he talks about the actual competition. He loves Miss America pageants, Miss Universe pageants. He loves it. But I really wish that it maybe had something to do with Big Brother or The Mole or something to do with Cheesecake or I wish, or The Office. I wish it was a little bit more thematic instead of just having like an outside like new element to bring in. It would have been cool if it was an episode of The Office for sure. A funny episode, an episode that he's referenced before, just to keep it on theme, or about the cocktail survey. Like, I don't know. I just would like him to play into the theme and things that have already been
probably knows that clip inside and out. So he was really comfortable with the material and he's like, we're going with this. I mean, I'm not, oh, should I say it? Andrew's going to kick me out, but I don't even like pageants. But, for funny moments, the girl who was on, the woman who was on Amazing Race, in the Iraqs and such and whatever she said. I mean, that's hilarious, but those clips will make the rounds on social media anyway. So I don't need to sit through a really archaic pageant that isn't Donald Trump like part of. Or he was missing. Oh God! So I stay away from all of that. No, thank you.
I mean, I used to watch it when I was younger, and I definitely really enjoyed it. And then at some point, I stopped wanting to watch it or whatever. So
it's just it's a very archaic for me because it represents women in a certain way and with having to look a certain way, and I just don't. It's not something I've ever connected with. I just don't appreciate that, and I would rather see women celebrated than kind of looked at from a certain view. And I think Andrew does celebrate them himself. He's found a way to do that by watching these. But I just think the vast majority of the audience is looking at it from a different perspective. So
for sure, no, I totally agree with you. I'm still shocked that it's still on. I'm like, oh, that still happens, because like it's not part of my world at all anymore, and and people don't become as not famous, but like they're not all over all news junkets, press junkets and stuff like that. Like I don't see them as much as I used to when I was younger. So
it had a time and place, and I mean, I did go to a drag pageant this year.
Fun. That's different.
That's Toronto had its first one in 11 years, but so that was fun and relevant, but it's in celebration, right? And so but like look, like Vanessa Williams, for instance. I mean, that was, I almost stripped of the title, but I mean, it was like
No
super
pun intended.
important and of what happened and things like that. So, I mean, it had its time and place. It's just, um,
It's not
it's
for you right now.
not for me. So I don't know how well I would have done in that competition, but
I think
those
I
are
would-
always hard ones.
So that's pretty much the end of the episode. He kind of just talked about the actual competition. So it's Big Brother, Total Recall. They got a clip. The clip we didn't know it at the time, but it was of this little pageant thing. It was about 10 minutes long, and they were not allowed to take any notes, and they had to just recall things by memory of questions that he was going to answer. So day 48 happens. He started off saying someone was late, but I think that it was misworded, because it seemed as though what the issue was that he sent out the link that people were supposed to watch, but he had it set at a specific time. And so
I think it was both. I think someone was late and he had been watching the clip. So when he sent it out, it was like at the 5-minute mark or whatever. And I mean, I don't know why someone wouldn't realize or at least ask the question as to like, hey, how much time do we have to watch this? How long is the clip? Are we supposed to rewind? You sent it at that. Like, why aren't you asking questions?
I think that in the future, Andrew will just say there is a 9-minute and 52-second clip for you to watch.
In its entirety.
Therefore, however long it is, it's going to be, watch the whole thing. So wherever it's at the clip.
I asked Andrew a million questions, I'm sure, last year about everything. I'm sure he hated it. But make sure you understand the competition as it's happening. He's there. So that's what he's there for. You can be like, hey, big brother, like am I allowed to do this? Is this how this works? Or
yeah, I definitely I would have PM'd him being like, it started at 4:52. Is that the right time for it to start at? And then he would have he did make the announcement, but Ryan had said that he had turned off his notifications because he didn't want to be distracted by who came into the house?
Tiffany.
Oh. Tiffany came into the house to kind of distract the house guests while they're doing this competition.
If Tiffany was on All Stars,
she might be. Well, no, she was really quiet in her game, so maybe not.
Didn't she make it like?
Oh, final 3, I think.
Yeah.
You guys are probably going to be teamed up.
Maybe some fireworks there.
Final 2. So yeah, I like this competition. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, like overall, just in what aspect of it are you asking? Like, what did you like about it?
I did like that it was something new. I liked the reveal of the answers on Zoom, of course, as Andrew knows that I was going to. I do like being able to see people's reactions, and the next day Andrew talks about it as well, as that you see the defeatedness in Curtis's face when he loses, which you wouldn't necessarily see in the the messenger chat.
It's another element to the game. It was very perceptive of him to notice that, but it's just that. It gives you an idea as to where his head was at, Curtis's head was at when it all went down. So, like we've been saying, video.
I mean, I know he's never going to go that way, but I love it, personally. And so it ended up being, so at the very end of this competition, it was pretty much tied between Curtis and Lindsay, and Curtis guessed low and Lindsay guessed a little bit higher, and Lindsay ends up taking home the veto. So she's one of 4, is it? Or is it one of 3 veto and head of household winners?
I think it's 4. I'm 4. One of them. Nick did it this year.
Nick.
Yeah, her and then someone else from another season. But yeah, I was playing along, and he guessed so low.
Yeah, he guessed low.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, when he said his number, I was like, oh, if he just like did 20 more, I think you would have been over her by a little bit. But I mean, he was being safe. So
Yeah, those are always fun. I like those. I like the guessing. I like the, as terrible of a memory I have, it's because I don't experience things that I experience, and like if I'm watching something, I will remember that. So I'm actually pretty good with recall, especially if I'm paying attention and I'm focused. My whole issue is that I don't pay attention. But uh and concepts and dialogue is not something I remember as much as visuals. So I love those games.
I did think that that whole ending was a nail biter, and I played along, and I definitely was. I could have done well in that competition, so I did like it for it being something new. I thought it was, if he decided to use it again, but
Off topic, but remember that competition you won last year where you were like, you had to pick the like average of like two things.
yeah.
Oh my God, you nailed that one.
Well, those stuff like that though, it's easy to nail.
I don't know how you did it. You were like so close that there was no one gonna beat you at all. I was
I
like,
had
what
one lockdown for sure.
Yeah.
Averages. Averages. So day 49, what happened here? CJ named Nether Alliance. What's the name of the day? Awesome Blossom? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just like writing stuff down. Why am I even bothering? I don't know why I needed that content, but apparently I did, and I can't even read my writing. But all in all, that day, Lindsay chose not to use the power of veto, which obviously makes sense. And that's one of the reasons why I think that Big Brother Canada has stopped having the head of household play in the power of veto, because if they were to win it, most of the time they do not use it because they're not going to change their nominees and have another person that they have to nominate. So what do you think? Where do you stand within Canada changing that rule? And
I hate that that rule's changed, because I think you absolutely need the opportunity to defend your choices and your, position um, within the game and everything else. So I mean, yeah, and if you win it, then you deserve it. And I think the head of household deserves to play in the veto. Having said that, that's what was her name? She had like colored hair, purple, maybe blue, where she started backdooring people in Big Brother US, and she kind of coined the whole.
Nokomis,
Yes, thank you.
the 5-finger plan.
And but that's kind of what you needed to do, was not have someone on the block and then use the veto and then put someone on the block and vote them out. So in those situations, you can get someone out, even if you're HOH. I think they would use it if that was the intention. But I mean, I didn't do it because I had exactly who I wanted on the block. It was very early. It was week 2. Nick also won it in week 2, so it's very early to backdooring someone in week 2 has that been done? I don't know. Like, what's the point? Just put people, you know what I mean? So, so our wins were very early, and I don't know who won it, the other person other than Lindsay, but yeah, when you have who you want on the block, then there's no point. But I think it's a possibility. It just depends.
For sure. So who's the big player that Curtis was referring to? Was that Ryan that he was talking about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's pretty out there that that they were perceived as king and queen, right? It's been talked about on our show. It's been talked about through them, and it's yeah. I mean, to me, that was definitely Ryan.
So much content. You're right, Andrew. This is the best season ever. Okay, we'll just skip. We know that she didn't use the power veto. We'll skip to day 50 now. Wait, what did I feel about this? Oh, well, before this episode was aired, Andrew messaged me being like, I better get an Emmy for this episode. So did you feel as though this episode was Emmy worthy? I believe it was the one where he was acting as Dwight from The Office. Your professional opinion, please.
Oh my gosh, I don't bring my professional opinion to non-union projects. Listen, I appreciate all of Andrew's antics, and they're well received on my end, and I enjoy watching them, and I watch all of it. And yeah, I mean, I do enjoy it. And I don't mind that the videos used to be, he used to get upset when videos were longer than like 10 or 12 minutes or something. And now they seem to all be like 26 minutes. But
Yeah, they're
I'm
long.
like, I'm in quarantine. I'll watch all of them. It's great. It's fantastic. So no, I keep doing it. I love it. And if, um, if and when I can vote on Emmys, I will see you there, perhaps, if that's a reality.
Ooh, yeah, nominate him. So who were the kids though? All the kids' photos that he was using in that episode.
The seasons, yeah,
The, this season's?
yeah.
I couldn't tell who was who. I
But
wasn't.
just people left in the game, and I don't think everyone, because he said something about Marson not, or no, he said something another day where he's like, "Thanks, Marson, I could have used this the other day." So I don't know if Marson's was there or not, but I was looking for. I definitely thought I recognized Nick.
Oh my God, I need to go look back and look because like I was like, oh, these the office people and like
and Ryan, I thought I saw too. I think I remember it being like, "Oh, that's Ryan."
I
Yeah,
love good pictures.
I thought it was the current. I might be totally wrong, but I
Okay,
thought
I'm gonna go back then and look, and then I'll do like I'll mock it up and put like then and now or something like that. I'll figure it out. Okay, so I had no idea. I was like, is that from The Office? Who are these kids? So
Hard to tell though. It's really hard to tell, but yeah.
Perfect. Who had the teeth?
I don't know.
Okay.
I need to go back to and rewatch that because that was a good one. Well, you did a little chart for me, and that'll be good enough.
Yeah, well, I'll bring it up next week unless Andrew clarifies beforehand. So this is where he puts the fear of God into the jury, and he explains that he's going to either replace the juror, sucks, or give them the poop out and veto if they decided to chit chat with anybody remain in the game.
And who? Oh my God! And how is that decided? Like, what if someone comes to you with some information?
Lie.
And then you're like. And then do you have to report it to Andrew? Like, this person came, I'm not hearing it. I don't like.
Well, basically, they'd have to be tattletold on for sure.
So, but then if you don't report it, but you didn't ask for the information and someone.
Well, I think it's the teller gets the first point of contact, the contactor. Like if I were to go and talk to you, then I would get the penalty. If you came and talked to me, then you would get the penalty. So if you're in the jury, and you talk to me, you'd get the penalty.
What if Ryan's on the jury? So what if Ryan goes and tells Brazil, A, B, and C, and then Brazil tells Kat that someone told her C, and then Andrew gets word of it from Kat, then it's then
it would be Ryan that would get
because he started it.
But then, from my understanding.
But then, Brazil would have spread it. So, I mean.
Well, but she's not spreading it to somebody that's in the jury. Like it's going across the jury line is I think what he's trying to prevent. So the information has already gone in, but the person that put the information into the house is the one that will be penalty, or the person that's putting the information into the jury or asking questions from the jury would get the penalty.
Well, guys, don't be stupid.
Just don't bother. It's fine.
Don't be stupid. It's like, it's not part of the game. He's said, don't do it. Just don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't explicitly said last season, I don't believe, because none of us are really rule breakers. And I feel like we would have respected rules, and the whole time we're just like, well, like, what's in the line of thing? If we are on, we can talk to people. There's a lot of things that were different from the actual game that we just figured was just a new game element that we're working with. So if this is part of the game that you're not allowed to, then that's.
And can you imagine being an idiot and like lasting that long, and then final 5 or 4, and you contact the jury about something and ruin your game? Like all these days, not worth it, guys.
I don't think they would bother, but maybe, I don't know. So they started a head of household competition, which was the BB Clockwork, which we both know quite well. The 25 hours is our medal, our longest time. So yeah, this is what it started this season. Do you think that they're going to do as well as we did?
Well, I happen to know, so maybe I shouldn't comment. I don't know.
Okay, well, I know
I
too.
was I was hopeful that I didn't think they were going to do as well as we did. No, and I was hopeful that they would experience what it's like at 9 o'clock in the morning, getting ready for work when you haven't slept. Um, and yeah, that's I was hopeful that they would experience that. So maybe they did, maybe they didn't.
That's pretty much what happened that day, though. He kind of explained the beginning of that one. Yeah, and this is the second of two, or is it the second of three? Second of two. So
Two.
that's the last endurance. There's no more endurance competitions.
Yeah.
I want there to be another one for some reason.
I do too.
There'll be a surprise one at like final three.
I'm like, just give it to them.
Let's make them stay up all frickin' night.
I feel like there is something that, because he's, you need to stay up for, and not because with endurances you kind of like can make deals and you can kind of like, or people can fall out early or whatever. I feel like there should be something that starts and ends within 24 hours and you kind of have to play or you lose. Not like you can win, in 10 hours or whatever. That's what I would like to see, a forced kind of, you either play or you don't play.
I wonder if he can figure something out, or I mean, all of his twists are up front though, so I don't know if he can change something for this season. But
I want a third one too. I was thinking that the other day. I was like, oh, I need another one.
I'm not satisfied for whatever reason. Day 51 comes along, and so this is Andrew's question for the day: is will Ryan be netted? And I felt that he was going to be at this point. I kind of felt because he was in such power position and control, and I felt that people were referring to him and Kat as king and queen and dictatorship and all this, and I didn't really know as much as I know now concerning like his other alliances and what other people that he was working with, but I felt that it was an opportunity to take those two people, to split them up anyways. Like they were a powerful duo that everybody seemed to know about already, regardless of any side deals. I thought that they were going to take that shot. That's who I thought was going to be put up, but it was Curtis and Ryan. And I 100% thought that Ryan was going to be going home. I didn't even think that it was possible that he was going to be staying.
Yeah, unless there was some sort of like some people are working with him that you're unaware of kind of a thing, then I thought that he was going home as well. But I have to say, I also think it's a mistake because I don't think you take, even at this point in the game, I don't think you take out number one. I don't think you take out the number one target because someone has to be number two and number three. So you need to figure out where you are. And often when you kind of split a duo in any of these reality games, that remaining person becomes a piece that you can use. And it's not necessarily the next in line to go, especially as numbers dwindle down. So, I mean, I would have taken someone out. I think I personally would have gone with, and I'm not naming names, I'm just saying in any situation, I would go with number two rather than number one. I would keep number one around a few more weeks, and try to get them out in a couple weeks.
Well, I hear what you're saying with that. I think that in this particular case that I feel as though because he seems to have a lot of influence, that this was an opportunity to take away some of that influence. So if he were to stay in the game and if he had as much social capital as he has mentioned that he had throughout the game and he had stayed, I feel as though it would have been more difficult to maneuver because they wouldn't have as many numbers potentially, and B, he would be able to sway people to do that what he wanted to do. And so I think it was just an opportunity just to take away someone that had so much influence.
Yeah, and I can understand it for sure. I just don't think that he had as much as he thought he did. And I think that, I think people just decided it almost doesn't matter because I think people who are in control right now have a good control over it. And it's the people who are in third and fourth. They need to realize that they're in third and fourth right now. And, often, and like with in our season with speaking to Jojo afterwards, he's like, well, it's going to be the three of us, and then whoever, not me, but three of you guys, and then whoever wins, you know, then we'll just fight it out from there. But I'm like, listen, if you want to win the game, you need to make sure that you are planning everything. And I think that you shouldn't just be like, oh, well, then we'll just make it down to the four of us and we'll be good and whoever wins or whatever. No, you've put so much work into this. When you're down to the four, you want to make sure that you're the most favorable position possible. And so, you know, realize if you're in third and fourth place, because again, like I said last week, it's like, you don't want to realize when it's too late and then can't do anything about it like I did.
So Ryan really was going hard to have Brandon leave in the double eviction. And yes, they had a lot of friction. And it's probably because, you know, Brandon didn't want to just go blindly. And, you know, when Ryan was to say, give me information, he would just offer it up. And so they weren't able to work together, but they were in the same department. And so I feel as though that could have been, I agree with Andrew, being a miscalculation in timing, that if he had allowed himself to just have a little bit more, like Brandon wasn't coming for him. He couldn't come for him. Yeah. And so he had a few weeks safety with more people fighting for him to stay. And so I feel as though he would have benefited having his entire department still intact and figure out how to work with more so with your department, because that's a high percentage of people working that can't get you out. Absolutely. And I feel that was a miscalculation for sure, is allowing his friction with Brandon cloud his safety that he received by having him in the house.
Yeah, I would never. I mean, I wouldn't want a single even if I thought they were a threat, I would want to keep my people in my department as long as possible until, because I'm safe. And it wouldn't be until I would need to make a move on maybe one of them, but like later on in the game. And I know we're over halfway, but still, it was an oversight, I believe, just because of, you know, he's coming for me, and, you know, these people are coming for me and I need to get them. But I don't know that you did.
So do you think that he has, he is, what's the word I want? So the fact that he was called being Netta, and Netta week, and like a lot of referencing him, do you think that was also played into his downfall or his eviction?
It's hard to say, but I mean, no, it's like, it's people aren't blind. So it's if Andrew's calling something out, it's because everyone's talking about it already for the most part. And he did bring something up, like if, you know, if half of the people are talking about it, then maybe the other half don't know. But I mean, with what was going on there, it's like, it was so obvious that I don't think Andrew brought light to it, or we brought light to it that wasn't already shone upon him. So, well,
and also like in our exit interview with Ryan, I kind of mentioned, like, you know, you might have wanted to lay low a little bit and not allow yourself to be a target, and he felt as though he couldn't do that, which is fair. That's the way he likes to play the game. But to knowing like that, to know the consequence will be that when your power, your safety, your shield is gone, people might take the opportunity to strike. And so I feel as though his power might have, like the power that he had within the game might have been skewed by the false sense of comfort and camaraderie with all the people that he's playing with, because he had this power. They couldn't go after him. So he felt so safe. And I think that he lost sight of, it was partially the fact that he was safe that gave him that false sense of security. And I think that was also a miscalculation.
And how he seemed really open and receptive to hearing our critiques about his gameplay is a good thing as a person, and, you know, moving forward. But I think that showed me how people could have worked him, and I don't know that he thinks that he was worked. I think that he was worked. But you know, because if you can see that someone's in need of that, like, well, how do you think I did this? Oh, really? That's the way you think? Like, if you need to, like, you know what I mean? If you need to have that from someone, that reassurance that
I'd be blowing up that ego, like, yes, sire. Like,
exactly that he seemed to have just in this interview. I mean, it was really evident that I'm like, oh, if I was in the game, I would know exactly how to play you because I know what you need as a person. And I think he's a lot more transparent than he thinks he is, which could have played into it.
For sure. And with having that safety, he wasn't able to see any cracks, right?
Yeah.
Like if he didn't have that safety, he might have been nominated sooner. You know what I mean? If he didn't have that safety, he might have heard rumblings of his name being, coming up, and maybe he'd have to play a little bit harder or shift or maneuver or change his tactic. But because he was never in any danger, he never could feel the rumblings of people coming for him. You know what I mean? And learning, like that's what you end up learning in playing these games is when you're about to go home. And usually it's too late the first time you play, but then for the next time you're like, okay, when people stop talking to me, or people just let me do this, or people say this really quickly, or people say oh, I haven't decided yet. Like you find all these different signs and signals as to when your number's up, and you could choose to re-maneuver, et cetera, et cetera. But he never really had to play that hard in keeping himself safe because he had that safety that was automatically there.
Exactly. And then
he got coddled.
He got netted.
I can't see.
Yeah. Now my dog's on my computer. Hold on. It's catastrophe.
Put it in front of your chest, maybe?
And you got
Oh, no, too far. Yeah, I really love Netta. I think that...
happy there. She's like, what just happened? What just happened?
That was... I mean, I wouldn't have done that. I think it was a bad move. I think it was a big move, but I thought it was a bad move, personally. I think that it was a decent move for Ika, but a bad move for Cindy. And yeah, I was not happy in that moment. I know that she was coming across as a bully, and people weren't liking the Netta that they were seeing. And I think it was also part of that not having to do anything, not having to make sure that she was kind to everybody, not having to make sure that people aren't trying to come after her because she was safe, complacent, not keeping those relationships really strong. And it's a similar position as to the mole, where she should have been nurturing those relationships regardless of the fact that she was going to be there, that she was the mole, and that she was safe in a kind of weird way, you know what I mean? So anyways, I think that he misplayed that power, and that power, I think, what was one of his major downfalls for sure.
Wait, is Netta with John, or was with John?
What, at one point, yeah.
I saw them outside my house.
She's
Kirsten Dundas.
I think now he might live in Vancouver or out west with what's the girl's name? She has the same name as the trans person that was on season 5. Kira. Kiki.
Oh.
Anyways, remember there was the 2 girls that were best friends. Okay, never mind. Let's just move on. Anything else happened that day? So I thought it was
nobody.
Big sting that Ryan went out first jury both times. I was like, ooh. And I said it in the episode that he has a winning strategy to get to first jury. I don't know if he has the chop to get to the end. I don't know if he knows how to reshift and remaneuver his gameplay in order to be adaptable enough to win.
Yeah, like you said, pivot. You've mentioned a few times, and you really do. You have to kind of see what's thrown at you and just go with it. But he went out with a bit of a bang, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had some his message. I think it's the next day, but we're kind of going into there anyways. Talking about, he's basically saying that it was a bad gameplay on the people left in the game that they got him out, but I think that's just bit bitter bus because obviously they felt stronger with Curtis, and especially if you didn't make any deals coming up into the last week of the game or last few days, like they don't really have any reason or loyalties. And yes, you're going to be on the jury, but they can still be working the other 6 players that are going to be on the jury, you know?
Exactly.
What are you looking at?
I just was looking up what his comments were.
His comments?
Yeah, his comments that he had posted.
Oh, he actually, yeah, I don't think I wrote them all down. Okay,
yeah.
so the previous week, though, they threw the veto to CJ. Did we talk about that? No.
A little bit in the exit interview, but not here.
No, but so this was the other thing that I agree with Andrew, that was also a fatal mistake, is like, because if the whatever veto that was used that ended up resetting the, I guess it was a Emerald veto. Emerald. If that was used the week before, then he was so hell-bent on getting out Brandon that he didn't flush out a friggin' power. Get rid of those powers when you can. Brandon isn't coming up after you or Kat that week, so you guys are going to be safe no matter what through them. Get rid of that power.
Unless someone you are really close with holds it and can use it for you, get rid of it. And I mean, that's also a telltale sign for some other people too. If people aren't pushing to get rid of that power, that means that they're working with those people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know why they I mean, it's an oversight. It's just thinking that it's underestimating someone, and you should never do that, ever.
I would always be like, oh, remember the flippers? Like, we're just like, get rid of all the we want all flippers play. You know, we wanted to play those flippers. Get those variables out.
Every single week, we controlled that flipper vote. We made sure people were using it. Oh my God, Emad, I tricked him into thinking that he was doing the opposite thing than what he was doing because he didn't know how they worked. And I felt so bad. That's the one I feel bad about. But every single week I was talking with people about using their flippers before the eviction. I'm sure other people were as well, but every single week, whatever I wanted to happen with those flippers, whatever we wanted to happen with those flippers, happened.
Only wanted to be the ones that had flippers left. Like, I was like, I want a flipper. Like,
I went home with a flipper because
I don't even know if I used my flipper.
I don't think you did either. No, it was me and you had them left.
Yeah.
And it was gone. Pooh Brown power beat.
I always wanted to have the flipper on me. Yeah, of course you wouldn't use it because you were never actually. I guess Alvin probably did he use once?
He did. He used his. Yeah.
Anyways, I wanted to be in control of all, or at least know and be working with the people that had access to their flippers.
Maybe JoJo had his left as well. Because we weren't using ours. We were like, we're gonna get everyone else to use theirs. We're not using ours. So that was hard because we had to convince people every single week to use 2 or 1, and we had to figure out how to control the vote that way. I mean, but there wasn't a week that went by that we were mistaken. We knew exactly how it was going to happen, and people who used their flippers were going to. And if it was questionable, we'd go after 3 people to use their flippers, so that at least 2 would, and it would negate it. I forgot about the flipper element to it. Oh my God.
Exactly. And flipper was a kind of a nuisance. You're just like, oh, let's just get rid of the flippers because it was just a variable that I didn't feel like always, thinking about. But I mean, we did have to think about it pretty much every week. Yeah, we did.
I was like, I'm not getting rid of mine because I want to be able to, even if I'm totally like blindsided, to be able to make people either think that I'm going to use it or I'm not going to use it, and then do the opposite. And I felt like really strongly that I could make people think one way or the other, by like reverse psychology or something. But
it's kind of like winning at rock paper scissors. It's like there is a strategy behind it.
But I mean, again, Pooh Brown gave me no opportunity to use it, so whatever. You me, you, and Alvin, I guess, were never on the block. JoJo was never either. He was just not taken to the final 2, right? So,
no, JoJo. I put JoJo on the block.
When did you put JoJo on the block?
Oh, mine had a festival week.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I mean, we're never so Alvin
And
I don't
me,
think
up
was
until Alvin put
you.
me on the block with JoJo. And
Did
you didn't actually get nominated, but yeah.
I was on the block because I put myself on the block. But who? So who were the only people never put on the block? Alvin,
Only Alvin.
and then me from someone else. But no one actually nominated me.
Correct.
My votes were anyway. It doesn't matter. We're talking about a different show. Okay.
Different show, different show. So the last day, pretty much today.
Sometimes I forget we're recording. Anyway, go on.
I didn't hear what you said. So what was interesting though, that like, so the one that Ryan lost, like he lost his competition, like he got 10 out of 10 for that friggin' veto. And that's why I'm just like, get rid of those powers. Like you shouldn't, if you're not feeling 100% comfortable with every single person left in the game that they're not going to put you up, get rid of powers that can disrupt any randomness.
That's really impressive. 10 out of 10. I mean,
and the person that has the power is one of the people that you don't feel comfortable with. So of course, if you win the power, they're going to use it. They don't want you to have it because you are going to be going after CJ if that were the case. I'd messaged Ryan. I asked him, did I say directly, was it in our group chat or was it solo? But I'd asked him whether or not, like, who he would have nominated if he, if this week didn't go this particular way.
Yeah. He said
CJ for sure.
Marcin.
And Marcin, correct. And so if CJ knows that she's in the hot seat with Ryan winning, like, dun da da da, I'm using this like veto redraw, like give me another chance, like hopefully not this guy, like I would 100% use it. And so miscalculation for them who don't even really care to work with CJ to throw her to the veto to get out somebody that's on your team who can't go after you right now. And then you would have most likely still have won that next competition and you would have been able to have your head of household and you would have been safe and you wouldn't have been the first jury member. So I know that he feels as though he didn't do anything wrong in his game, but I think that I agree with Andrew that all these were definite miscalculations and missteps.
Yeah, well, he pointed out it's like a series of unfortunate events kind of a thing. It's like, well, if this didn't happen, I mean,
so that veto
the same with all of us. We all have that story. Mine was if I didn't pick, if my name wasn't picked by Andrew and I didn't pick number 4, I wouldn't.
You shouldn't have played. You know you shouldn't have played.
Like it was literally like a minute before I was downstairs in the gym freaking out. But it was, it was just all these crazy. If I picked any other number, or if Andrew didn't pick my name, or if I just didn't dive down, you know what I mean? It was meant to be. So.
It was meant to be, but I think he really shouldn't have thrown that veto. I 100% think that started the downward spiral.
Oh my gosh.
His need to get Brandon out of the game, it was this downward fall.
Come back for All-Stars and make it.
Come back. Was there anything else that happened today? Nah. I think we got it all. We talked a lot. Sorry, guys, this is long. If you got till this point, we love you, Brazil. We love you, Nicole. We love you, Andrew. We love you, JoJo.
Charlene, thank you.
Charlene has not gotten this far. We're probably like over 2 hours at this point. There's no way she's here. But if you're here, Charlene, thank you so much. You probably broke us down into segments and watched like 15 minutes a day for the next week. So we appreciate you watching this whole thing. Rylan appreciates you too. JoJo appreciates you. And we appreciate you, JoJo, for watching this all the way to the end. I have nothing left to say other than clarifying that it's Realnesss with 3 S's on Instagram, or me at ShanFranFran. You can find on Instagram Jonathan at
Jonathan Oliveira 1983.
And yeah, JoJo at Joseph O'Toole on Instagram.
And Rylan the dog on Instagram.
Stop. I'm adding, it's a him or her?
Rylan the dog. It's a him. RYLAND. Rylan the dog.
He's going to be trending.
We'll follow you back.
I know. Okay, perfect. Subscribe right down below. Hit that like button. Ring that bell so you can be notified when we have a new episode. And I'm done with talking. I will see you guys next week.
Bye.